If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description. Additionally, if you would like to request novels and access my Google Drive where I have 200 plus audiobooks, then you can join my Patreon. Link is also provided in the description.
Chapter 166, The Rogue Bludger. The morning of the Quidditch match between Gryffindor and Slytherin dawned bright and crisp, the anticipation in the air almost palpable. If you asked any student about the incident at Halloween, they would likely respond with a confused, "What incident?" Nothing mattered to them in the face of such an exciting matchup. As Harry made his way to the Quidditch pitch, he couldn't help but feel a mix of curiosity and excitement for what was to come. He knew that Dobby would act today to save Charles's, but the changes in this timeline made the specifics uncertain. Mainly because Charles was a chaser and not a seeker like Harry from the books. The stands were packed as the Gryffindor and Slytherin teams took to the field. Harry's eyes were drawn to Charles, looking determined in his chaser's robes, and then to little Ginny Weasley, her face set with concentration as she mounted her broom. On the Slytherin side, Draco Malfoy's blonde hair gleamed in the sunlight, his new Nimbus 2001 held proudly. As Madame Hooch blew her whistle, the players shot into the air. Harry watched intently, waiting for any sign of Dobby's interference. It didn't take long. Barely 5 minutes into the game, a bludger suddenly changed course mid-air, homing in on Charles with unnatural precision. Charles dodged it skillfully, but the bludger kept coming back, ignoring all other players. "That's not right," Cedric muttered next to Harry. "Bludgers aren't supposed to focus on one player like that." Harry nodded. "The bludger has gone rogue, it seems. I don't know what the rules are regarding rogue bludgers. It looks like my little brother isn't going to get a chance to perform in this game. Poor boy. It's as if some higher being doesn't want him to excel in Quidditch." Roger agreed. "I know. Your brother seems cursed to not have a good Quidditch match. I'm also confused about the bludger rule. Let's see what Madame Hooch does." With that, the crowd watched as Charles was forced to spend more time evading the rogue bludger than participating in the game. The Gryffindor team was essentially down a chaser, putting them at a significant disadvantage. Madame Hooch checked the bludger once for any problems but, seeing nothing wrong, let the play resume. So Charles still had to continue dodging the bludger throughout the game. The Weasley twins tried to help by beating the bludger away from him, but seeing it wasn't working and the other chasers needed their help, Charles told them to go and leave him alone. Despite this, the match remained surprisingly close. Ginny proved to be an excellent seeker, her small size and quick reflexes allowing her to outmaneuver Draco several times. The other Gryffindor chasers, Angelina and Alicia, stepped up their game, compensating for Charles's forced absence. The game was neck and neck, with each goal the Slytherin side scored, the Gryffindor side launching a counterattack and equalizing. This was quite different from the books since in the original timeline, with their superior brooms, the Slytherin side was dominating in a one-sided manner. Here, with their usual teams and less skill, the Slytherin chasers were not that strong. As the game progressed, the crowd's cheers became increasingly punctuated with gasps of concern every time the bludger nearly struck Charles. Harry could see Lily Potter in the teachers' stands, her face a mask of worry as she watched her son narrowly escape injury time and time again. Just as it seemed Charles might make it through the game unscathed, disaster struck. The bludger caught him off guard, striking his arm with a sickening crack. Charles, clearly in pain, lost his grip on his broom and began to fall. A collective gasp rose from the crowd, but before anyone else could react, Lily Potter was on her feet, wand out. With a swift incantation, she slowed Charles's descent, gently lowering him to the ground. But the danger wasn't over. The bludger, seemingly intent on finishing the job, hurtled towards the fallen chaser. Lily's eyes flashed with maternal fury. She stepped onto the field, her wand ablur as she cast a powerful shield charm, deflecting the bludger mere inches from Charles's chest. With another flick of her wand, she immobilized the rogue ball, ending its reign of terror. That was very dangerous. Harry didn't know what Dobby was thinking, letting the bludger have a go at Charles like that. It could have seriously injured Charles and caused him a lot of pain. In the Muggle world, such an impact could have been fatal. Harry was thankful he didn't have Dobby trying to save his life. The crowd erupted in a mix of cheers for Lily's quick action and concerned murmurs for Charles's condition. But the game wasn't over yet. High above the drama unfolding on the ground, Draco Malfoy had spotted the snitch. Ginny, momentarily distracted by Charles's fall, was a split second too late in noticing. The superior speed of Draco's Nimbus 2001 gave him the edge he needed. With a triumphant grin, he closed his fingers around the tiny golden ball, securing the victory for Slytherin. As the Slytherin stands erupted in cheers, Harry made his way down to the field. He had no particular reason to go to the field, but he was glad he did. As Harry reached the field, pushing through the crowd of concerned students and faculty, he arrived just in time to see Lockhart, his golden hair gleaming in the sunlight, approach the injured Charles Potter. "Not to worry, I can fix that arm in a jiffy," Lockhart announced, brandishing his wand with a flourish. "No!" several voices shouted in unison. Harry noticed Oliver Wood, the Gryffindor team captain, looking particularly alarmed. Even Lily Potter, who was by her son's side, tried to intervene. "Professor Lockhart, I really think we should wait for Madame Pomfrey," Lily said, her voice tight with concern. But Lockhart, ever confident in his abilities, ignored the protests. "Nonsense! I've done this countless times. Stand back, everyone!" Before anyone could stop him, Lockhart twirled his wand and uttered a spell. There was a strange squelching sound, and Charles let out a yelp of surprise rather than pain. Harry watched with a smile as Charles lifted his arm. Instead of being broken, it now appeared to be made of rubber, flopping uselessly at his side. It looked very amusing, and Harry had another idea for a prank he could use on Sirius. "Ah," said Lockhart, looking slightly abashed. "Yes, well, that can sometimes happen. The point is, the bones are no longer broken." "Broken?" Lily Potter's voice was dangerously quiet. "There are no bones left." In a flash of maternal fury, Lily's hand connected with Lockhart's cheek in a resounding slap. The impact sent the flamboyant professor stumbling backward, his perfect smile finally faltering as he landed unceremoniously on the grass. Harry struggled to maintain his composure, fighting back the laughter that threatened to burst forth. The sight of the pompous Lockhart sprawled on the ground, his carefully coiffed hair in disarray, was almost too much to bear. Lily, ignoring Lockhart completely now, gently helped Charles to his feet. "Come on, sweetheart. We need to get you to Madame Pomfrey right away." As Lily guided her son off the field, his boneless arm swinging like a rubber glove, Charles's friends hurried after them. Ron and Hermione's faces were a mix of concern and disbelief as they followed the Potters towards the castle. With the excitement over, the crowd began to disperse. Students and teachers alike filed out of the stadium, their conversations a buzz of speculation about the rogue bludger, Slytherin's victory, and Lockhart's disastrous attempt at healing. The Gryffindor side was also very sad. Some complained about Charles, but seeing that he was hurt, most had to reluctantly hold their tongues. Harry solemnly made his way back to the castle. He was not in a solemn mood about what had happened on the Quidditch pitch, but about what was to come next. If Harry remembered correctly, in the books there was an attack by the basilisk tonight. This meant Harry was going to have a long night following the heir and ensuring that nothing went wrong. Just like in the books, he hoped the victim would be luckily petrified and not killed. With this weighty thought on his mind, Harry prepared himself for the challenges that lay ahead. Chapter 167, The Basilisk Strikes. As night fell over Hogwarts, Harry donned his invisibility cloak and focused on the tracking spell he had placed on Evelyn Rosier. Knowing an attack was imminent, he needed to follow her to ensure no one got killed. His heart raced with a mix of anticipation and dread as he followed the magical signature through the castle's corridors. Harry's mind was a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. He was going against his principles by allowing the attacks to take place instead of putting an end to everything from the start. By putting his fellow Hogwarts students' lives at risk just to cause trouble for Dumbledore and reduce his influence in the wizarding world, wasn't he acting no differently than Dumbledore with his greater good philosophy? Moreover, Harry had received Gryffindor's inheritance of night training and battle spells specifically to protect the school from Slytherin's basilisk once it went rogue. Yet here he was, letting the attacks happen instead of saving the school. He was becoming more like a politician and a hypocrite, a realization that sat uneasily with him. As these thoughts swirled in his mind, Harry approached the location where he sensed Rosier through his tracking spell. He stood in the corridor, unable to see her, but certain he was in the right place. His enhanced hearing picked up the unsettling mutterings of the basilisk, its sibilant hisses echoing through the walls. Occasionally, Evelyn's voice would cut through, commanding the snake in Parseltongue. "Go left. Now right. Be silent." Harry realized they were moving through the pipe network hidden inside the walls. He followed their voices and the tracking spell, his steps careful and measured. For hours, Harry trailed the invisible pair. Although he had yet to catch a glimpse of the basilisk, he was prepared for its deadly stare. During the holidays, he had acquired a rare pair of glasses designed to deflect the snake's fatal gaze, ensuring its deadly glares would be useless against him. The glasses sat comfortably on his nose, a reassuring weight. As the night deepened, Harry heard approaching footsteps. Soon, a student came into view, Colin Creevey, the enthusiastic first-year Gryffindor, walking alone in the corridor. Harry's guilt deepened as he recalled from the books that Colin was to be the first human victim of the heir. Colin, skipping happily, had no idea of the danger he was in. "Can't believe it. The Prophet bought my Quidditch photos." Colin muttered excitedly to himself, practically bouncing with joy. "Wait till everyone hears about this." Seeing the happy Colin, Harry's mind raced. This was different from the canon. Colin should have been visiting the injured Charles, as in the books. This deviation meant that events might not unfold as expected, potentially leading to more dangerous outcomes. Harry considered intervening but quickly realized it was too late to stop this now. Fighting the basilisk inside the school would endanger Colin and other students, while confronting the heir might lead to their escape and a more dangerous rampage. His identity could be exposed, complicating matters further. After careful consideration, Harry decided to let the attack proceed for now. He silently vowed that Colin wouldn't remain petrified for long, he'd ensure the boy's recovery as soon as possible. He planned to end the chamber saga quickly and procure mature mandrakes from overseas, rather than waiting for the school's crop to mature as Dumbledore had done in the books. As Harry contemplated his next moves, the situation in the corridor suddenly changed. A section of the wall began to move, and the massive head of the basilisk emerged, its scales gleaming in the dim light. The sight of the enormous serpent left Harry momentarily stunned. He could hardly fathom how long its body must be, coiled within the castle walls. Harry realized that the basilisk would be a formidable opponent. Its size and magical immunity meant that defeating it would require all of his strength and skill. He would need to use his knight's sword, and the ideal battleground would be the chamber itself. Harry marveled at how his counterpart in the books had managed to defeat this monster and survive. The snake's gaze fixed on the oblivious Colin, who continued to walk away, lost in his happy thoughts. Then, Harry heard Evelyn's voice, cold and controlled, hiss out a command, "Kill him." Colin, hearing the strange noise, began to turn around. Harry realized things were diverging from the books. Colin wasn't instinctively raising his camera to diffuse the basilisk's killing gaze. If this continued, Colin would die. Harry knew he had to act. Swiftly, he pointed his wand at the unsuspecting boy and cast a Confondue's charm, compelling Colin to use his camera. As if in slow motion, Harry watched Colin raise the camera to his eye just as he completed his turn. There was a brilliant flash as Colin took the photo, illuminating the corridor for a split second. When the light faded, Colin stood frozen, petrified but alive. To Harry's surprise, he sensed a hint of relief from the basilisk. In its deranged eyes, he saw a flicker of intelligence. Harry wondered if the snake would have tried to save Colin even without his intervention. Perhaps when Colin saw the basilisk, it would have waited for him to take a photo before attacking. Harry couldn't be certain, but he wanted to believe that a Hogwarts founder wouldn't create a monster intent on killing students. From behind the huge basilisk, the heir emerged. Harry could tell Rosier was completely under possession, unaware of her actions, much like a sleepwalker. The heir, or rather the young Tom Riddle, seemed satisfied with the outcome and retreated. He commanded the basilisk to follow, and the massive creature slid back into the concealed opening, which sealed shut behind them. Harry approached the petrified Colin, guilt weighing heavily on him. He performed a quick diagnostic spell and was relieved to find nothing wrong beyond the petrification. He cast a spell in the corridor to subconsciously attract any nearby students, ensuring Colin would be found quickly, then left the scene. The night's events had taught Harry a valuable lesson. He realized he had been subconsciously manipulating events to suit his needs, much like the very people he criticized. This path was leading him to become more like a politician and a hypocrite, traits he despised in others. He decided to take some time to reflect on his actions and create a set of personal rules to prevent himself from continuing down this questionable path. As Harry made his way back to Ravenclaw Tower, a renewed sense of purpose filled him. He was determined to stay true to his principles moving forward, even if it meant facing greater challenges. The path ahead might be more difficult, but Harry knew that with careful planning, rigorous training, and an unwavering moral compass, he could navigate the obstacles successfully. He realized that the easy path of manipulation and deceit was not the legacy he wanted to leave. With these thoughts, Harry drifted off to sleep, ready to face whatever tomorrow might bring with renewed determination and a clear conscience. Chapter 168, Setting the Stage. The next morning, a somber atmosphere enveloped Hogwarts as Professors Flitwick and McGonagall gathered the students to make an announcement. The great hall buzzed with whispers and nervous energy, the air thick with anticipation. Professor McGonagall cleared her throat, silencing the room. "Students, we regret to inform you that there has been another attack. Colin Creevey, a first-year Gryffindor, was found petrified last night." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Rumors of an attack had circulated the previous night, and this confirmation sent fear shooting through the student body. The relative calm that had settled since the Halloween incident shattered instantly. Professor Flitwick stepped forward, his voice steady despite his small stature. "We want to assure you that we are investigating this matter thoroughly. In the meantime, we urge all students to exercise extreme caution. No one is to wander the corridors alone, especially after curfew." As the professors finished their announcement, the hall erupted into frantic discussions. Harry, maintaining his composure, reassured his friends that nothing would go wrong. Most of Harry's friends came from wizarding families, and the knowledge that the heir traditionally targeted Muggleborns provided them with a small measure of relief. Throughout the day, Harry noticed a marked change in the school's atmosphere. Fear had taken hold, and with it came some interesting developments. A thriving black market in protective charms sprang up overnight. "Get your genuine protective amulets here." Fred Weasley's voice rang out in the common room. "Ward off evil spirits and pesky petrification." George chimed in, "Don't forget our special monster repellent. Guaranteed to keep you safe or your money back." Harry shook his head, amused despite the gravity of the situation. He spotted Neville clutching a handful of amulets, his eyes darting nervously around the room. "Neville," Harry approached him gently, "you know those probably won't help, right?" Neville nodded sheepishly. "I know, but it makes me feel better. After last year's adventure with you, Harry, I thought I was done being scared, but this is different." Harry patted his shoulder reassuringly. "Just stick with your friends, okay? Safety in numbers. Most people doing these kinds of hidden attacks are afraid of groups." Neville thanked Harry and ran off to join a group of second years heading to class. As the day progressed, Harry couldn't help but notice the absence of the Golden Trio. Charles had healed his missing bones from Lockhart's mishap, which took only a night's rest thanks to Madame Pomfrey's potions, and resumed his secret adventures with his two friends. Harry wasn't bothered by their activities, he had other concerns. Now that he had decided to end things before another attack, Harry needed to ensure he could confront the heir and the snake without endangering other students. After formulating a rough plan, he set to work enacting it. That evening, as Harry helped Professor Flitwick in his office, the diminutive professor turned to him with a serious expression. "Harry, there won't be a training session today. I'm needed elsewhere. The professors all have a meeting tonight." Harry seized the opportunity. "Is this about the Chamber of Secrets and the attack, Professor?" Flitwick nodded gravely. "Yes. The attack has all of us baffled. The petrification is very odd, and we don't know what caused it." "Yes," Harry mused, carefully choosing his words. "And from what I've heard, the first-year student wasn't directly attacked. It's as if he looked at whatever monster is kept in the chamber, and it petrified him without contact. It's very strange." Flitwick looked surprised. "Things spread quickly in this school, don't they?" "Yes, Mr. Creevey seems to have gotten a good look at the monster. Keep this between us, but the boy apparently took a picture of it. Unfortunately, his camera didn't survive, so we couldn't learn anything from it." Harry pressed on, "Professor, I heard the chamber was opened once before, and a student died. Can you tell me any information you know about that?" Flitwick raised an eyebrow. "It looks like you're investigating the chamber, Harry. You've gathered information quickly." "I have to, Professor," Harry explained earnestly. "Many people I care about are in this school right now. I don't want them to face any danger. Can you tell me about the previous attack?" Flitwick sighed. "Okay, I will tell you. Yes, the chamber was opened a few decades ago. At that time, one girl died. However, that's all I know." Harry leaned in, his voice low. "Was that girl killed without any direct contact, Professor?" "I don't know," Flitwick admitted. Maybe Professor Dumbledore does. Is the information important? Harry nodded solemnly. Yes. If the girl was killed without any contact, I can roughly guess what Slytherin's monster is, and if my guess is correct, it doesn't bode well for the castle or its occupants. Flitwick's eyes widened. That bad? Tell me your analysis. Harry took a deep breath. Well, you know that Slytherin is synonymous with snakes. This leads me to believe that the monster housed in Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets is most likely a snake. And as you know, Professor, most snakes kill their prey with poisonous bites or by crushing them. But there are exceptions, and the most prominent and feared of these is the basilisk. Basilisk! Flitwick exclaimed. But basilisks kill with their stare. Exactly, Harry confirmed. And that's what I suspect killed the girl years ago. Now, however, some lucky coincidences might have saved the recent victims. Mrs. Norris, for instance, might have seen the basilisk's reflection in water. Flitwick's face paled. And Mr. Creevey looked at the monster through his camera lens. A very plausible theory, Harry. You're right, if true, the situation is dire indeed. I must inform the headmaster of this analysis immediately. With that, Professor Flitwick hurried out of the classroom, leaving Harry alone with his thoughts. He watched the professor go with a solemn expression, knowing that this was just the first step in his plan. By alerting the professors to the possibility of a basilisk, Harry hoped they might suspend the school and send the children to a safe place for a thorough search of the castle. That would give him the opportunity he needed to confront the snake without endangering anyone else. As he left the classroom, Harry's mind was already racing with the next steps of his plan. The stakes were high, but he was determined to end this threat once and for all while ensuring nothing went wrong and innocent students were not put in danger. With renewed determination, Harry headed back to his dormitory, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead in his quest to protect Hogwarts and its inhabitants. Chapter 169, Staff Meeting. The scene opens in Dumbledore's office, where all the professors have gathered for an emergency meeting. The atmosphere is tense, with worried faces all around. Dumbledore stands at the head of the room, his usual twinkle dimmed by concern. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. As you know, we have a grave situation on our hands. The Chamber of Secrets has been opened and a student has been attacked. It is fortunate he is just petrified and not worse. He turns to Professor Sprout. Pomona, what's the status of our mandrakes? Professor Sprout shakes her head, her usually cheerful face creased with worry. I'm afraid they're not mature yet, Albus. It will be several months before we can harvest them for the restorative draft. Dumbledore nods gravely. I see. Unfortunately, we don't have the budget to purchase mature mandrakes from outside sources at the moment. I will have to appeal to the Board of Governors for emergency funds. In the meantime, we must focus on preventing any further attacks. He then turns to Professor Flitwick. Phileas, I believe you have some information to share with us. Flitwick clears his throat nervously. Yes, Headmaster. But first, I must clarify that this analysis isn't mine. It comes from my apprentice, Harry Potter. Murmurs ripple through the room at the mention of Harry's name. Flitwick continues, Mr. Potter has suggested that the monster in the Chamber of Secrets might be a basilisk. Gasps echo around the room. Professor Sprout clutches her chest, while Professor Sinistra's eyes widen in shock. Flitwick then explains Harry's reasoning, detailing the connection between Slytherin and snakes, and the peculiar nature of the attacks with no direct contact. Snape, his face impassive, speaks up. It makes a certain amount of sense. The petrification, the lack of direct contact. Potter may be onto something. He turns to Dumbledore. Headmaster, what steps should we take if this theory proves correct? Lily Potter interjects, her voice filled with concern. We must close the school immediately. We should invite special hunters to track down and kill this basilisk before it harms any more students. As a Muggleborn herself, Lily had a keen understanding of the fear and vulnerability that Muggleborn students were experiencing in this situation. She knew they were at greater risk than their pure-blood peers, and the thought of them living in constant fear weighed heavily on her. Moreover, with both her sons, Harry and Charles, currently at Hogwarts, her maternal instincts were in overdrive. The desire to protect not just her children, but all the students, fueled her urgent plea. Dumbledore raises a hand to calm the rising tension. While I appreciate the gravity of the situation, we must not act hastily. We have no concrete proof that a basilisk is indeed the culprit. It could be something else entirely. He strokes his beard thoughtfully. Closing the school based on suspicion alone would be unwise. Besides, I am not very convinced of this reasoning. An ancient basilisk would be enormous and should be easily seen. None of the portraits have reported seeing such a large serpent slithering about the castle, leaving me with doubts about this theory. Professor McGonagall frowns. Then what should we do, Albus? This is the best probable reasoning we have come across and I am a little convinced. Is there no way to confirm whether a basilisk is truly lurking within Hogwarts? Dumbledore shakes his head. Unfortunately, no. For now, our best course of action is to implement stricter guidelines. Students should be discouraged from wandering the corridors during their free time. And I'm afraid we must cancel Quidditch for the time being. McGonagall's lips thin in disapproval, but she nods. The students won't like it, but their safety must come first. Lockhart, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly perks up. Not to worry, everyone. I've handled basilisks before in my travels. Should I spot the beast, I'll dispatch it forthwith. He beams around the room, seemingly oblivious to the skeptical looks he receives. And I have an idea to placate the students about the Quidditch cancellation. Why not start a dueling club? Dumbledore raises an eyebrow. Go on, Gilderoy. It would excite the students, take their minds off Quidditch, and prepare them to defend themselves. After all, if it's not a basilisk, it could be a student using some cursed artifact. Best to be prepared. Dumbledore nods slowly. That's not a bad idea, actually. Very well, we'll implement a dueling club. I assume you're volunteering to run it. Lockhart puffs out his chest. But of course. Who better? Excellent. And Flitwick, would you like to assist Gilderoy? Flitwick shakes his head and says, I am sorry, Professor, but I would have to decline. Teaching dueling to a group of students is not my forte. I prefer teaching one-on-one, which is not suitable here. Also, I don't have the time, being occupied with teaching my apprentice. What he left unsaid was that he did not want to become an assistant to Lockhart. It would not look good for him teaching dueling with Lockhart to a group of students. Dumbledore nods, unfortunate. The students would have preferred the teaching from a former dueling champion. Severus, perhaps you could assist. Snape's face contorts as if he's just bitten into a lemon, but a pointed look from Dumbledore silences any protest. Dumbledore addresses the room once more. Then it's settled. We'll increase security measures, cancel Quidditch, and start a dueling club. Let's hope these steps will be enough to keep our students safe until we can solve this mystery once and for all. As the meeting adjourns, the professors file out, their faces a mix of worry and determination. The next morning, the Great Hall buzzes with anticipation as students gather for breakfast. Professor Dumbledore stands at the head table, his face grave as he addresses the school. Students, in light of recent events, we must implement stricter security measures. Effective immediately, there will be a more stringent curfew. All students must return to their common rooms by 7 p.m. A wave of groans and protests sweeps through the hall. Additionally, Dumbledore continues, raising his voice slightly, I regret to inform you that all Quidditch matches and practices are cancelled until further notice. This announcement is met with outright outrage. Oliver Wood looks as if he might faint, while the Weasley twins shout, you can't do that. Before the situation can escalate, Professor Lockhart stands up, his dazzling smile in place. Now, students. While I understand your disappointment, I have some exciting news that might cheer you up. The students are not appeased though. They are still protesting, but some of them are curious about what Lockhart wants to announce. Lockhart continues, in a few days' time, I will be starting a dueling club. You'll have the opportunity to learn from my vast experience in magical combat. It's sure to be both educational and thrilling. The announcement has an immediate effect. Excited chatter breaks out across the hall. Many of Lockhart's admirers squeal in delight, while others look intrigued by the prospect of learning practical defense skills. Oh, isn't it wonderful? Lavender Brown gushes to Parvati Patil. Professor Lockhart teaching us to duel. Not everyone shares their enthusiasm. At the Ravenclaw table, Reggie rolls his eyes. Great, more chances for Lockhart to show off and not teach us anything. I bet the whole thing would be a waste of time. Roger adds, yes. It would have been better if Professor Flitwick had started the club. Harry, listening to the conversations around him, feels a mix of emotions. He is disappointed that his plan to close the school hasn't worked. The clues he'd provided through Flitwick, it seems, weren't enough to convince Dumbledore of the immediate danger. Harry frowns. While he is glad to see some changes happening, like the early announcement of the dueling club, it isn't enough. The school full of children is still at risk from the basilisk. As he mulls over the situation, Harry realizes he needs to reassess his plans. With the school still open and security tightened, he can't risk confronting the basilisk. The danger of something unexpected happening and it escaping into the crowded castle during a fight is too great. This is because Harry feels the battle with the snake would be close and not one-sided where he could control all the outcomes. In this battle, there is a high chance something unexpected could happen. This isn't like the books, Harry thinks to himself. In the real world, a cornered basilisk and a desperate piece of Riddle's soul could cause unimaginable damage to the school full of students. He glances around the Great Hall, watching his fellow students excitedly discuss the upcoming dueling club. Their enthusiasm only heightens his sense of responsibility. I need a new plan, Harry decides. Something that will protect everyone without risking a full-scale disaster. As breakfast ends and students begin to file out for their classes, Harry hangs back, lost in thought. Harry, you coming? Cedric calls from the doorway. Yeah, just a second, Harry replies, gathering his things. As he joins his friends, he can't shake the feeling that time is running out. He needs to act soon, before the heir of Slytherin strikes again. Chapter 170, Dueling Club. The day of the first dueling club meeting soon arrived, and the Great Hall buzzed with excitement. The long dining tables had been removed, replaced by a golden stage along one wall. Candles floated overhead, casting a warm glow over the eager faces of the gathered students. Harry stood with his friends, observing the scene with a detached air. Since the attack on Colin, there had been no further incidents, and Harry had been incredibly busy. Unable to have the school suspended to battle the basilisk and the heir without worrying about potential collateral damage, he had decided on a new course of action. Harry was now focused on strengthening himself to have the power and confidence to take on the basilisk while maintaining total control of the situation. To achieve this, he was dedicating all his free time to his knight training. Harry's goal was to advance from an apprentice knight to a full-fledged knight as quickly as possible. He believed that with the boost in strength that came with becoming a knight, he could defeat the basilisk easily. To aid in this endeavor, he had enlisted the help of the centaurs. Their cooperation during the previous years had been great, and upon hearing that he needed training to defeat a threat to the school, the centaurs had agreed to assist. So every night, when not occupied with his apprenticeship under Flitwick, Harry was honing his sword-fighting skills and taking on groups of centaurs using only his knight strength and skills, without magic. The training was progressing well, and Harry expected to achieve knighthood in a couple of months. He hoped that, like in the books, there would be a significant gap before the next attack, allowing him to gain the strength needed to deal with the basilisk before another incident occurred. As for the dueling club, Harry attended this meeting primarily to witness Lockhart making a fool of himself and possibly see Charles reveal himself as a Parselmouth. Harry was curious to see if Charles, having been raised in the wizarding world and knowing the stigma associated with the ability, would use his power to talk to snakes. Unlike Harry from the books, who discovered his ability during the zoo incident, Harry didn't know if Charles was even aware of his Parcel tongue gift. So Harry was doubtful whether Charles would even attempt to communicate with the snake. This was the main reason for his attendance. He had no plans to participate in future meetings. As the hall filled with students, Lockhart strode onto the stage, resplendent in robes of deep plum. He was followed by a scowling Snape, dressed in his usual black. "Gather round, gather round!" Lockhart called, waving his arms for silence. "Can everyone see me? Can you all hear me? Excellent!" He flashed his trademark smile. "Now, Professor Dumbledore has granted me permission to start this little dueling club, to train you all in case you ever need to defend yourselves as I myself have done on countless occasions. For full details, see my published works." Harry heard Roger snort beside him. "I'd rather face the heir of Slytherin than read those books again," he muttered. Lockhart continued, "Let me introduce my assistant, Professor Snape. He tells me he knows a tiny little bit about dueling himself and has sportingly agreed to help me with a short demonstration before we begin." The demonstration proceeded much as Harry remembered from the books, with Snape easily disarming Lockhart. The crowd of Slytherins cheered, while Lockhart quickly tried to save face. "Well, there you have it," Lockhart said, getting to his feet. "That was a disarming charm. As you see, I've lost my wand. Thank you, Miss Brown. Yes, an excellent idea to show them that, Professor Snape, but if you don't mind my saying so, it was very obvious what you were about to do. If I had wanted to stop you it would have been only too easy. Snape looked murderous, and Lockhart seemed to notice. Enough demonstrating. I'm going to come amongst you now and put you all into pairs. Professor Snape, if you'd like to help me. They moved through the crowd, matching up partners. Lockhart teamed Neville with Justin Finch-Fletchley, but Snape reached Charles first. Time to split up the dream team, I think, he sneered. Weasley, you can partner Finnegan. Potter. Charles moved automatically towards Hermione. I don't think so, said Snape, smiling coldly. Mr. Malfoy, come over here. Let's see what you make of the famous Potter. And you, Miss Granger, you can partner Miss Bulstrode. Malfoy strutted over to the podium, smirking. Charles also approached with confidence. Seeing this pairing, most students stopped and surrounded the ring to watch the battle. Their well-known rivalry in the house competition made this duel particularly exciting. Harry observed all this as a spectator, intrigued to see how Charles and Malfoy would fare. Given Charles's early training, Harry expected him to display better skills than the Harry from the books. Face your partners, called Lockhart, back on the platform. And bow. Charles and Malfoy barely inclined their heads, not taking their eyes off each other. Wands at the ready, shouted Lockhart. When I count to 3, cast your charms to disarm your opponents, only to disarm them. We don't want any accidents. 1, 2, 3. Charles swung his wand over his shoulder, but Malfoy had already started on 2. His spell hit Charles so hard he felt as though he'd been hit over the head with a saucepan. Enraged, Charles got up and cast spell after spell at Malfoy. The spells hit Malfoy head-on. Fortunately for Malfoy, the spells Charles knew were mostly harmless and prank-oriented, so he wasn't badly hurt. He just experienced a tickling sensation all over, and his face turned pink while his hair became red. The crowd laughed at the sight. Charles was laughing so hard at Malfoy's new look that he missed his angry opponent getting up and casting Tarrant Legra, forcing Charles to dance uncontrollably. This continued for some time, with Lockhart screaming for the duel to stop as it spiraled out of control, but no one listened. A senior student, taking pity on Charles, cast Finite Incantatem, ending the dance spell. By now, everyone else had stopped their duels, and the entire school was watching these two battle it out. The two boys were locked in a fierce duel, neither seeming to care about the disarm-only instruction that Lockhart was still shouting. Suddenly, Draco shouted, Serpensortia. A long black snake shot out of his wand, landing heavily on the floor between them. It raised itself, ready to strike. Screams filled the hall as students backed swiftly away, clearing the floor. Charles taunted, What's up with the snake, Malfoy? It's so far away. Can you even command it to attack me? Stupid. Malfoy ordered the snake, Go attack Potter. But the snake didn't listen. It just looked around the hall at the other students, appearing somewhat scared. Harry watched the snake with interest, curious to see what would happen next and if this would reveal Charles's parcel mouth ability. He chuckled at Draco's failed attempts to control the snake. Charles laughed, It doesn't listen to you. That's hilarious. He then added, Maybe it will listen to me. I'll send it to attack you. That'll be funny. Snake, go and attack Malfoy. Unbeknownst to Charles, that last line had been in Parcel tongue. He felt he had spoken normally in English, but the entire audience heard hissing noises from Charles. They were confused, but to their surprise, the snake obeyed Charles and moved to attack Malfoy. Harry watched all this unfold with great interest. A stunned silence fell over the hall. Harry could see the shock and fear on the faces of those nearest to Charles. Charles himself looked confused. The snake, however, was not confused at all and was close to attacking the stunned Malfoy. Snape, seeing Malfoy in danger, snapped out of his shock and stepped forward, waving his wand. The snake vanished in a small puff of black smoke. He looked at Charles with a shrewd and calculating expression. Murmurs broke out across the hall. He's a parcel mouth. Did you hear that? Charles Potter can talk to snakes. Ron grabbed Charles by the robes and began to steer him out of the hall, Hermione following close behind. As they passed, Harry could hear Ron muttering, Come on, move, come on. As the golden trio disappeared through the doors, the whispering grew louder. Some people asked Harry if he knew Charles had this ability. He said no. They knew Harry wasn't close to Charles, so they soon left him alone. Lockhart, looking flustered, attempted to regain control of the situation. "Well, that's enough excitement for one night, I think. Same time next week, everyone." As the students began to file out, still buzzing with excitement and fear, Harry pondered what would happen next. How would Charles handle being called the heir of Slytherin? How would his parents react? How would Charles having Lily Potter inside the school as a teacher change the next events of suspicion and potential bullying? Harry was eager to see how these new developments would unfold, knowing that they might significantly alter the course of events he remembered from the books. Chapter 171, Uncoiling a Secret. The next day, rumors spread like wildfire through Hogwarts that Charles was the heir of Slytherin. Many students began avoiding him out of fear, with Muggleborns especially keeping their distance to avoid inadvertently offending him and becoming the next victim of Slytherin's monster. Charles found himself isolated, with only Ron and Hermione for company. This isolation and the fearful looks from his peers were taking a toll on Charles. Unlike Harry in the books, who had endured years of neglect with the Dursleys, Charles had been raised with love and care. The consecutive years of being treated as an enemy and isolated were proving to be too much for the 12-year-old boy. To make matters worse, news of Charles being a Parselmouth had leaked to the outside world. The Daily Prophet was now running wild conspiracy theories about him. Unable to cope, Charles sought comfort from his mother. Lily, feeling helpless and angry, marched to Dumbledore's office to complain. "Albus," Lily said, her voice tight with frustration, "you promised everything would be fine this year. You said Charles wouldn't have to face such experiences again. Now look at what's happening." Dumbledore sighed heavily. "I understand your concerns, Lily. We're doing everything we can to resolve this situation." "Well, it's not enough," Lily exclaimed. "If you can't fix this Chamber of Secrets mess, I'm taking Charles out of Hogwarts." As Lily and Dumbledore discussed the situation, Dumbledore came up with a plan to prove Charles's innocence, but he needed some outside help for this plan to work. Meanwhile, Harry was focused on his training, paying little attention to the drama unfolding in the school. However, his routine was interrupted when Professor Flitwick informed him that he had been summoned to the headmaster's office. Confused, Harry made his way to Dumbledore's office. Inside, he found not only Dumbledore but also Lily and Charles. Lily looked angry, while Charles sat quietly, traces of tears on his face. "Headmaster, what can I do for you?" Harry asked coolly. "If it's related to family matters, I'll leave now. I won't agree to anything." Dumbledore replied, "Mr. Potter, it's school-related. Please stay." Harry waited and listened as Dumbledore continued, "Have you been paying attention to the things happening inside the school? Your brother is having a very bad time. I don't have time to care for a crybaby's complaints." "What's been happening? Being bullied due to what happened at the dueling club? I have faced worse due to the actions of people in this room. It looks like in these past 2 years, it is time for Charles to face some difficulties," Harry said bluntly. Dumbledore and Lily were ashamed of what Harry was implying. Seeing Lily Potter was trying to argue and maybe ask for forgiveness, Harry bluntly said, "If there is nothing else, I am leaving. I have a very busy schedule. This small problem for the baby boy can be taken care of easily by his mother and you, headmaster. There is no need to call me here." Dumbledore explained, "Yes, I can vouch for Charles's innocence, but that won't be enough to calm the rumors. My credibility is not so high these days. We want your help, Mr. Potter." Lily interjected, "Professor, how can Harry help Charles here?" Harry, intrigued, asked, "Yes, headmaster, it makes no sense. I have zero influence in the outside world to calm this trouble. Also, have you found out why Charles is a Parselmouth? Is he really the heir of Slytherin?" Dumbledore revealed his theory about Charles absorbing Voldemort's powers, and his plan for Lily to explain this to the school while Harry demonstrated he wasn't a Parselmouth to prove the theory. Harry scoffed, "A very funny theory, Professor. But I would like to say you're wrong, and even if you were right, I won't help put on a show just to prove your grandson's innocence." Harry paused for a moment and continued, "And it looks like you don't even want to come out yourself. You just want to stay behind and have us do all the work. If you really want to alleviate Charles's pressure, you just have to come out and vouch for Charles. I think with your influence, people will leave Charles alone." Dumbledore knew the course of action Harry pointed out was right, but he did not want to proceed that way. He wanted the true attacker to believe Dumbledore suspected Charles and that the attacker himself was safe. That false sense of security would ensure the attacker is not cautious enough and Dumbledore can catch him. Dumbledore pleaded, "Please help us and your younger brother, Mr. Potter." Lily added, "Can you do this for Charlie, Harry? Please." Charles just looked at Harry with pleading eyes, his arrogance gone. Harry sighed. "It looks like you didn't hear my first sentence, Headmaster. Your theory is wrong, and I won't vouch for a wrong theory." "What do you mean, Mr. Potter?" Dumbledore asked, surprised. "Where am I wrong?" Harry turned to Lily. "I believe Charles is really descended from the Slytherin line and that's how he gained the ability to talk to snakes. Isn't that right, Mrs. Potter?" The room fell silent. Lily paled. "Harry, where did you hear this?" "I'm a Muggle-born." Harry pressed on, "I don't have time to fool around, Mrs. Potter. Tell the headmaster and your son the truth." But Lily acted confused and denied everything. As the tension in the room grew, Harry decided to take a drastic step to prove his point. Without warning, he drew his wand and cast Serpent Sortia. A long, black snake erupted from the tip of his wand, landing on the floor between them with a heavy thud. The snake, disoriented and agitated, raised its head and fixed its gaze on Charles. Charles stumbled backward, his eyes wide with fear. "Harry, what are you doing?" he gasped. The snake, sensing Charles's fear, began to slither towards him, its forked tongue flicking out menacingly. Dumbledore reached for his wand, but Harry stopped him. "Don't move, Headmaster," Harry said calmly. "Let's see what happens." He then cast a disarming charm at Lily, who had her wand out to save Charles, sending her wand flying out. As the snake neared Charles, coiling itself to strike, Lily's maternal instincts took over. Without thinking, she blurted out, "Stop! Don't hurt him!" But what came out wasn't English. Instead, a series of hisses and sibilant sounds filled the room. The snake immediately halted its advance, turning its head towards Lily and lowering itself submissively. Harry, seeing that his point had been made, quickly cast Vipera Evanesca, causing the snake to vanish in a puff of black smoke. A stunned silence fell over the office. Dumbledore's eyes widened in shock, while Charles stared at his mother in disbelief. "Mom!" Charles whispered. You can speak to snakes too." Lily, realizing what she had done, covered her mouth with her hand. Her secret, long hidden, was now out in the open. Harry, looking satisfied, vanished the snake with a wave of his wand. "As I said, Headmaster, Lily Potter is a Parselmouth. That's how Charles inherited the ability. It has nothing to do with Voldemort's attack." Dumbledore, recovering from his shock, turned to Lily. "Is this true, Lily? How long have you known?" Lily, her face pale, nodded slowly. "Yes, it's true. I've known since I was a child, but I kept it secret. The stigma. I was afraid of what people would think." Charles, still processing this revelation, asked softly, "Why didn't you tell me, Mom?" Lily's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Charlie. I was trying to protect you. I never thought you'd inherit the ability." Harry, having made his point and not wanting to watch the drama, turned to leave. "Now that the truth is out, I believe my work here is done. It looks like I'm a pureblood and not a half-blood. Good to know. Will be helpful in any future ventures in the Ministry. Headmaster, you might want to reconsider your theory about Charles and Voldemort's powers. Good day." Chapter 172, Scouting the Chamber of Secrets. Harry didn't know what transpired between the Potter mother and son duo and Dumbledore after he left the room abruptly. He was curious, but he had no way of knowing. However, the next day, Dumbledore stood up during breakfast to vouch for Charles's innocence, so the meeting must have ended on a positive note. Unfortunately for Charles, this did not result in much change. The students were still suspicious and stayed away from him. Meanwhile, Harry continued his training with the Centaurs, which was becoming increasingly enjoyable. The Centaurs were always very serious in their fights, giving Harry thrilling challenges that he relished. However, while Harry was preparing for his upcoming big battle, things had gotten out of control in Hogwarts. It seemed as if Harry's disruption of the plot had caused the universe to go haywire and speed up subsequent events. Things transpired like this: one day, Lockhart accidentally leaked the fact that the monster of Slytherin might be a 1,000-year-old pet basilisk of Salazar Slytherin. He made this mistake while bragging in class about his various feats of valor against magical creatures. And of course, I've faced basilisks before, Lockhart boasted. Nasty creatures, those. Why, the one in Slytherin's chamber must be absolutely ancient by now. However, no need to worry, I will handle it once it surfaces in the open. This caused an uproar inside the school. Knowing the Slytherin monster might be a basilisk terrified everyone. A magical creature that could kill just with a gaze was a cause for worry and nightmares. A basilisk. A boy whispered, his face pale. We're all going to die. The professors couldn't calm down the scared students. They tried to say that Lockhart had lied and that the monster was not a basilisk, but no one believed them. Things went more out of control when this news reached the outside world, and the parents of Hogwarts students learned about the life-threatening danger lurking inside the school. They wanted to take their children out of the dangerous school immediately, but when that was blocked, they went to the ministry to complain. Now the Minister of Magic, Cornelius Fudge, was in danger of losing his position. Knowing he had to act, he told his cronies to do something. They looked into the Chamber of Secrets incident and, finding that Hagrid was suspected the last time it opened and was still inside the school, they decided to arrest him. Fudge wanted to show the people that he had listened and had arrested the culprit quickly. Dumbledore wanted to protect Hagrid, but Fudge was more afraid of losing his position than he was of Dumbledore, so he disregarded Dumbledore's advice and sent Hagrid to Azkaban. The arrest was published which, although it did not allay the fears of the students who knew the kind half-giant was just a scapegoat, mollified the parents and left Fudge alone. If another attack happened, they would be back. Harry watched all this happen and was shocked at how things had gotten out of control. Harry's aim in releasing the basilisk idea was just to have Hogwarts suspended, but instead, everything else was happening. Events that occurred in the books only near the end of the year were happening so quickly. This made him afraid, and he knew he had to act soon before anything else happened. However, before blindly going to fight the heir and the basilisk, Harry decided to scout out the chamber. He wanted to get to know the place and maybe lay some traps before deciding on the final battle date and time. He knew this battle was going to be life-threatening and any mistake might lead to his death. He had to take advantage of every little thing to put things more in his favor. Thankfully, with his special glasses, he was immune to the basilisk's deadly gaze, and from the magical ritual he had done a few months back, he was immune to poison. So all he had to worry about was the huge size and bite of the basilisk. Reaching the chamber entrance in Moaning Myrtle's bathroom, Harry looked around for the ghost. He couldn't open the entrance in front of her. Thankfully, she wasn't there, but he did find something interesting in one of the empty stalls, a cauldron with a potion boiling inside it. Inspecting the potion, Harry found it to be the Polyjuice potion. He knew it must be the work of the Golden Trio and, like in the books, they wanted to use the potion to gain some intelligence on the heir of Slytherin from Malfoy. With a mischievous glint in his eyes, Harry took out some rare magical ingredients from his pouch and tampered with the potion. He didn't do anything bad, he just improved their potion and ensured that it would last for a longer time. Harry wanted to see what would happen when Charles and Ron stayed as Crabbe and Goyle for more than a day. It would be interesting and very fun to watch. After the mischief was done, Harry got serious. He hissed open in Parseltongue near one of the pipes with the snake logo, revealing the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets. At once, the tap glowed with a brilliant white light and began to spin. The next second, the sink began to move, sinking right out of sight, leaving a large pipe exposed, wide enough for a man to slide into. Harry saw from the size of the pipe that there was no other way than to slide down. This confused him about how people got back up from the chamber. There were no stairs to go up. Harry didn't have to worry about this since he could float up, but he was puzzled about how Evelyn or Tom Riddle went up and down. With those thoughts, Harry sat in the pipe slide and hissed close to seal the entrance behind him. Then he jumped inside the slide. It was like rushing down an endless, slimy, dark slide. He could see more pipes branching off in all directions, but none as large as his, which twisted and turned, sloping steeply downwards. He knew that he was falling deeper below the school than even the dungeons. It could have been a fun ride if not for the slime and dirtiness. The slide ride soon ended, and Harry was ejected out. He was prepared though and landed smoothly on his feet on the damp floor of a dark stone tunnel, large enough to stand in. Harry lit his wand with a whispered lumos and began to carefully explore the dark, damp tunnel. The air was thick with the musty smell of age and decay. As he moved forward, his footsteps echoed ominously off the stone walls. Suddenly, he came across something that made him pause. In front of Harry was a large, shed snakeskin. Its vivid green color had barely faded, and it was at least 20 feet long. The sheer size of it drove home just how massive and deadly the basilisk truly was. Finally, after many more minutes of walking in the darkness, the tunnel ended. At the end, Harry saw a solid wall ahead on which 2 entwined serpents were carved, their eyes set with great, glinting emeralds. "Open," said Harry, in a low, faint hiss while standing in front of the wall. The serpents parted as the wall cracked open, the halves slid smoothly out of sight, and Harry walked inside. He was standing at the end of a very long, dimly lit chamber. Towering stone pillars entwined with more carved serpents rose to support a ceiling lost in darkness, casting long black shadows through the odd, greenish gloom that filled the place. At the far end of the chamber stood an enormous statue of a wizard whom Harry assumed was Salazar Slytherin, its ancient face staring down at him. The resting place of the basilisk should be in the chamber behind the statue, with the entrance inside Slytherin's mouth. Harry carefully made his way around the chamber, noting every detail. He wanted to identify every location he could use to his advantage during the battle with the basilisk. He also looked for any secret chambers but found none. Maybe they were inside the basilisk's resting place. Satisfied with his visit and confident he had memorized the layout, Harry decided it was time to leave and made his way back through the tunnel to the entrance pipe. He checked to ensure he wasn't seen, then made his way back to his dormitory, his mind full of plans to tackle the basilisk. He just had to get a few things before the fight. Chapter 173, The Basilisk Revealed. After his visit to the chamber, Harry began preparing for the big fight. His first priority was acquiring a good rooster that knew how to crow. Despite the basilisk's immense size and dangerous gaze, it had a glaring weakness: the crowing of a rooster was fatal to it. When Harry first read about this fact, he thought it was a joke. Such a majestic and dangerous creature being killed by a rooster's crow seemed absurd. However, after consulting other books, Harry confirmed it was true. It was like Achilles in Greek mythology, great strength paired with a fatal weakness. While Harry wasn't certain if it would work on the 1,000-year-old Slytherin's basilisk, it was worth trying. If successful, Harry would win the dreaded battle instantly. If not, he'd have to resort to hacking at the snake with his sword. Besides the rooster, Harry started preparing items to restrict the huge creature's movement and other useful tools. Meanwhile, Hogwarts was far from quiet. A few days after Harry's chamber visit, the polyjuice potion brewed by the Golden Trio was ready. Harry was surprised it had been completed so quickly, but it seemed they'd acquired the necessary ingredients sooner than expected. One fine morning, Snape called Charles, Ron, and Hermione, or at least their current polyjuice forms, to the front of the Great Hall. Charles now looked like Goyle, Ron like Crabbe, and most amusingly, Hermione resembled a furry cat girl. The students were confused but couldn't help laughing at the sight. Snape, his voice dripping with disdain, began to explain. It seems our adventurous trio decided to brew an illicit potion to disguise themselves and infiltrate the Slytherin dormitories. While they succeeded in their misguided endeavor, they failed spectacularly in brewing the potion correctly. Now they find themselves stuck. The students had mixed reactions, some were amused, and others were shocked. Snape continued, his tone growing colder. Normally, such blatant disregard for school rules would result in immediate expulsion. However, he paused, his lip curling, it seems our celebrity has certain privileges. So, unfortunately, you all must continue to endure their presence in this institution. Lily and Dumbledore watched silently, having apparently reached a compromise with Snape. In exchange for not expelling the trio, Snape had demanded the opportunity to shame them publicly. It seemed Snape had won this round. I will be deducting 150 points from Gryffindor, 50 for each of these rule breakers, Snape concluded, his voice laced with satisfaction. This announcement caused an uproar from the Gryffindor table, but it quickly died down. They had lost so many points due to the actions of the Golden Trio that they had given up complaining. It was not going to result in anything. Gryffindor winning the House Cup looked like a distant dream as long as Charles was in the house and broke the rules without any regard for the Gryffindor house. Harry felt a twinge of guilt for his prank, which made Charles's life more difficult, but he consoled himself by reasoning that they were going to break the rules anyway, he had just ensured they got caught. Besides, Charles had his parents and fans to support him emotionally. Some difficulties at a young age would help him grow into a better person, Harry told himself. He could already see the change. Charles was no longer the pompous self he was at the start of school. Now he might start controlling his instincts of becoming the savior and learn to respect the rules just to have a good relationship with his housemates. As the commotion in the Great Hall settled, Harry's mind returned to his preparations. All preparations were happening smoothly. However, just a few days before the Christmas holidays, when Harry was finally planning to end the whole saga and was ready to battle the basilisk, something unexpected happened. The tracking charm he had applied on Evelyn Rosier, the heir, broke. "This is bad," Harry muttered to himself. Tom Riddle must have found the tracking charm and got it removed. Now he must know someone's onto him. Harry knew he had to act immediately and confront the soul piece now. He didn't know what actions the soul of Tom Riddle would take now that he knew he was suspected of being the heir by someone. Harry quickly referred to the Marauder's map, searching for Evelyn Rosier's name, but found it missing. It seemed Tom Riddle was now fully possessing her, and the Horcrux was hiding her location. Harry was a little afraid and started running around the castle looking for the rogue heir and the basilisk's crazy hissing sounds. He had a premonition that an attack would take place soon, and since this incident was completely different from the books, Harry had no idea who would be attacked. The next victim in the books was the Hufflepuff Justin Finch-Fletchley, but he was currently in the Hufflepuff common room, safe. After an hour of fruitless searching, he was about to give up when he heard the familiar, deranged hissing of the basilisk. Racing towards the sound, Harry rounded a corner to find the basilisk facing a terrified Hufflepuff boy. Harry recognized him as a Muggle-born third year but couldn't recall his name. A disembodied voice hissed in Parseltongue, "Someone's here. Quit wasting time and kill them both." Acting quickly, Harry cast 2 slime spells at the basilisk's eyes, rendering its deadly gaze harmless and blinding it temporarily. He then sent a patroness to summon Professor Flitwick, informing him of the attack. Harry wasn't fully prepared to take on the basilisk, as he was still in his school robes, which weren't suitable for a fight. He knew he needed help. Silencio. Harry cast on himself and the Hufflepuff boy and a few more silencing spells to ensure the now blind basilisk could not find either of them through sounds. Oxio. Harry added, summoning the other boy towards him. As the basilisk thrashed about blindly, Harry began casting spells at it, knowing they were largely ineffective against its magic-resistant hide. He retreated, carrying the Hufflepuff boy who was now frozen with fear but otherwise okay with him. The heir, seeing the basilisk failing to finish the job, now started directing the basilisk in Parseltongue and telling it where Harry was. Seeing this, Harry gave up casting spells on its magic-resistant hide and started using the blocks that had broken from the walls from the rampage of the snake and sent them all to the snake. This, although not hurting the huge snake much, was slowing it down. Harry wanted just this. Keep continuing this till the professors come. And the professors did come. Within minutes after the fight began, Professors Flitwick and McGonagall arrived on the scene. "Merlin's beard!" McGonagall exclaimed, her eyes widening at the sight of the enormous serpent. Flitwick, recovering quickly from the shock, joined Harry in attacking the basilisk. "Keep it up, Harry!" he shouted. "Dumbledore's on his way." On hearing this, another hiss echoed through the corridor, a command for the basilisk to retreat. The great snake stopped its rampage, hissed a secret phrase, and a section of the wall opened up, allowing it to escape. As the wall sealed shut behind the basilisk, silence fell over the corridor. "So that's how it's been moving around undetected," McGonagall said, her voice barely above a whisper. Flitwick turned to Harry, his expression a mix of pride and concern. "You were right, Harry. It is a basilisk, and a monstrous one at that." Before Flitwick could ask any more questions, Dumbledore arrived, his face grave. "Is everyone all right?" he asked, looking from Harry to the professors to the unconscious Hufflepuff boy. "Yes, Albus," McGonagall replied. "Thanks to Mr. Potter here. He managed to block the attack and save young Mr. Brooks. However, we saw the basilisk, Albus. It was huge." Dumbledore's gaze swept over the scene, noting the debris scattered across the floor and the visible bruises on both Harry and Brooks. "I see you've all had quite the encounter. We need to get you both to the hospital wing immediately." Harry nodded. He hadn't noticed the cuts and bruises in the heat of the moment, but those small bruises were nothing to him. The boy Brooks might be a different case. He must have had the fright of his life. Hopefully, his heart could handle that and he would be okay. "Indeed," Professor Flitwick agreed. "And we need to hear the full account of what happened." Mr. Brooks' perspective could be crucial. Dumbledore nodded. Agreed. Let's move this conversation to the hospital wing. Poppy can treat their injuries while we discuss this alarming development. And perhaps Mr. Brooks will wake up soon and provide us with more information. As they made their way to the hospital wing, Harry supporting the still unconscious Brooks with help from Professor Flitwick, Harry's mind raced. He had managed to prevent a tragedy, but he knew this was far from over. The heir was still at large, and the basilisk was still a threat. But now, at least, the truth was out in the open. Harry hoped that at least now, the school might get suspended so he could have a go at the basilisk without any worries. Chapter 174, The Chamber's Victim. As they entered the hospital wing, Madame Pomfrey immediately bustled over, her eyes widening at the sight of the unconscious Brooks and the visibly bruised Harry. Merlin's beard. What happened? She exclaimed, quickly ushering them to nearby beds. While Madame Pomfrey tended to Brooks with various potions and spells, she efficiently healed Harry's minor bruises with a few quick wand movements. Harry was patched up in no time, but Brooks required more intensive care, including several calming drafts to stabilize his condition. As the matron focused on Brooks, Dumbledore turned his piercing blue eyes to Harry. "Mr. Potter, I believe it's time you shared your account of these events." Harry had already used the time they took to get to the hospital wing to cook up a believable story. He said, "As Professor Flitwick may have mentioned, I've been investigating the heir of Slytherin incidents since the first attack. I've been patrolling the corridors, hoping to catch the culprit before they could harm anyone else. Today, I had a strong premonition that an attack was imminent tonight. Acting on this feeling, I searched the castle and fortunately arrived in time to intervene." Dumbledore's brow furrowed. "A feeling, Mr. Potter? That's rather vague. And weren't you concerned about facing the basilisk yourself?" Harry met the headmaster's gaze steadily. "I have a certain aptitude for divination, sir. Professor Trelawney can attest to this. Also, I concluded that the heir is likely a student inside the school. I'm confident in defeating any student at Hogwarts easily. As for the basilisk, once I deduced its nature, I researched ways to combat it. The eye-blinding tactic I used today was a result of that preparation." Professor Flitwick chimed in, "Albus, I can vouch for my apprentice's exceptional strength and abilities. There have indeed been rumors in Ravenclaw about his prophetic gifts." Dumbledore nodded slowly, still not entirely convinced. Snape, his dark eyes narrowed, asked, "Did you see the perpetrator, Potter?" Harry shook his head. "No, sir. They remained hidden within the walls, only issuing commands." The voice was strange. Like a boy speaking through a girl. McGonagall nodded, her face pale. "We heard it too, those hissing commands in Parseltongue. It was as Mr. Potter described, unrecognizable and decidedly odd." Their conversation was interrupted by Madame Pomfrey. "Mr. Brooks is awake, but still quite shaken." The professors gathered around Brooks' bed. The boy, his face still ashen, recounted his experience. "I was returning from the Olary when suddenly the wall opened, and this massive snake appeared. I was paralyzed with fear. I thought I was going to die. After that, everything's a blank." After a few more questions yielded no further information, Dumbledore sighed. "Very well. We shall convene in my office to discuss our next steps. Mr. Potter, you may return to your dormitory." As Harry left the hospital wing, his mind was already racing ahead. He made a detour to the room of hidden things, retrieving the items Myra had helped him gather for the impending confrontation. He suspected the school would close soon, giving him the opportunity he needed to face the basilisk. Waiting any longer was going to be risky and might lead the future in an unknown direction. By the time Harry went to his dorms, everyone was asleep, so Harry escaped the interrogation about what happened. The next morning, rumors of another attack by the heir of Slytherin spread like wildfire through the school. Harry anxiously awaited an announcement about the school's suspension, certain that even Dumbledore wouldn't keep Hogwarts open with a 1,000-year-old basilisk roaming its walls. If he did, the other professors would surely revolt. However, before Harry could even reach the Great Hall for breakfast, Professor McGonagall's magically amplified voice echoed through the corridors. "All students return to your house dormitories immediately. All teachers report to the staff room. This is urgent." Harry's heart sank. Something else must have happened, perhaps another attack. This was bad. Instead of heading to the dorms, Harry made his way to the staff room. He needed to know what was happening. As he watched the other professors entering, he lingered by the door. Surprisingly, none of them seemed to mind his presence, their faces etched with worry. Professor McGonagall arrived last, her expression grim. "It has happened," she announced to the silent room. "A student has been taken by the monster. Right into the chamber itself." Professor Flitwick let out a frightened squeal. Professor Sprout clapped her hands over her mouth in horror. Snape gripped the back of a chair, his knuckles white, and demanded, "How can you be sure?" "The heir of Slytherin," McGonagall replied, her face ashen, "left another message. Right underneath the first one. Her skeleton will lie in the chamber forever. We were about to suspend the school until the new year, we're too late." Professor Flitwick burst into tears at this news. "Who is it?" Madame Hooch asked weakly, sinking into a chair. "Which student?" "Evelyn Rosier," McGonagall answered, her voice barely above a whisper. Harry's mind raced. He realized the soul of Tom Riddle, aware that someone was onto him, had decided to retreat to the chamber to complete his resurrection using Evelyn's life force. There was no need for the heir to take any more risks now. Just then, Dumbledore entered the room, his usual twinkle absent from his eyes. "We will send the students home tomorrow," he announced gravely. "I didn't want to do this, but I think we might need some help dealing with the basilisk. I have called Amelia for assistance. The Aurors will be here soon." Harry could tell that Dumbledore was reluctant to allow outsiders into his domain, but he had no other choice given the dire circumstances. As everyone stood in somber silence, Lockhart suddenly burst into the room. "So sorry, dozed off. What have I missed?" he asked cheerfully, oblivious to the hostile glares directed his way. Snape stepped forward, his lip curling. "Just the man," he said silkily. "The very man. A girl has been snatched by the monster, Lockhart. Taken into the Chamber of Secrets itself. Your moment has come at last." Lockhart's face went pale. "That's right, Gilderoy," Professor Sprout chimed in. "Weren't you saying just last night that you've known all along where the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets is?" I Lockhart spluttered, his usual eloquence deserting him. Lily Potter added pointedly, "Yes. Please go to the chamber and defeat the heir and the basilisk. It can be made into another one of your books." "We'll leave it to you, then, Gilderoy," said Professor McGonagall. "Tonight will be an excellent time to do it. We'll make sure everyone's out of your way. You'll be able to tackle the monster all by yourself. A free rein at last." Lockhart gazed desperately around him, but nobody came to his rescue. His handsome facade crumbled, his lip trembled, and without his toothy grin, he looked weak-shinned and weedy. Very well," he stammered. I'll be in my office, getting ready." And he fled the room. "Right," said Dumbledore, "that's got him out from under our feet. The heads of houses should go and inform their students what has happened. Tell them the Hogwarts Express will take them home first thing tomorrow. Will the rest of you please make sure no students have been left outside their dormitories?" The teachers rose and left one by one. Harry slipped out with them, his mind racing with plans for the confrontation ahead. Chapter 175, The Marauder and the Chamber of Secrets. As evening fell over Hogwarts, Harry learned that Sirius had arrived at the school. He was leading the first group of Aurors, not to confront the basilisk, but to ensure the safe evacuation of students to the Hogwarts Express. Eager to see his godfather, Harry sought him out. Sirius greeted Harry with a mixture of relief and concern. "Harry, thank Merlin you're all right. Amelia sent me personally to make sure you and Susan were safe. What in Godric's name is going on here?" Dumbledore's been tight-lipped, only mentioning a basilisk attack. Harry recounted the story he'd told the professors, watching Sirius's face grow increasingly worried. When he finished, Sirius ran a hand through his hair, a habit Harry recognized as a sign of stress. "Merlin's beard, Harry. Taking on a basilisk. I'm proud of your courage, but you could have been killed." The old Gryffindor in Sirius couldn't help but admire his godson's bravery, even as the concerned guardian in him fretted. Sirius cast a quick Mufflieto charm and leaned in closer. "Now, what aren't you telling me? I know that look in your eye, pup. You're holding something back." Harry glanced around, then led Sirius to an empty classroom. After casting additional privacy charms, he took a deep breath. "You're right, Sirius. There's a lot more going on." Over the next few minutes, Harry laid out everything to Sirius, his investigations into the attack, suspicions about Evelyn Rosier, the signs of possession he'd observed, and his theory about Voldemort's Horcrux behind everything. Sirius listened, his face growing grimmer with each revelation. Another Horcrux? How many of those monstrosities has that mad guy made, and how did such a seriously dark object get through Hogwarts wards? And you think Voldemort's trying to resurrect himself? Harry nodded solemnly. I had planned to deal with the Horcrux and the Basilisk tomorrow when the school was empty, but with you here, we might be able to end this tonight. Sirius straightened, his eyes gleaming with determination. What do you need me to do? For the next 30 minutes, Harry outlined his plan in detail, explaining the chamber's location, how to access it, and his now modified plans to save Evelyn and destroy the Horcrux. Sirius listened intently, occasionally asking for clarification but mostly marveling at his godson's knowledge of everything surrounding the heir and the Chamber of Secrets. He loved the plan Harry had come up with to deal with everything. As night fell and the castle grew quiet, Sirius made his way to Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. The corridors were eerily silent, with only the occasional whisper of a ghost or creak of ancient stone breaking the stillness. At the sink Harry had described, a soft hiss revealed the entrance to the chamber. Without hesitation, Sirius plunged into the dark slide, feeling a mix of exhilaration and trepidation as he descended into the bowels of Hogwarts. Behind him, the entrance sealed itself with another hiss. As he navigated the narrow, damp tunnels, Sirius couldn't help but be impressed by the intricate network hidden beneath the school. Slytherin, you crafty old snake, he muttered, noting how the pipes seemed designed for more than just plumbing. They were perfect pathways for a giant serpent. Each obstacle Harry had warned him about opened at the sound of that mysterious hiss, leading Sirius deeper into the chamber. Finally, he emerged into the vast hall Harry had described. The towering pillars and the enormous statue of Salazar Slytherin loomed before him. Blimey, Salazar, Sirius chuckled nervously. Godric was definitely the better-looking founder. His humor faded as he spotted a small figure huddled at the base of the statue. Evelyn Rosier lay there, pale and still, but mercifully alive. Sirius approached cautiously, wand at the ready. Sirius called out, Miss Rosier? Are you all right? I'm here to take you to safety. The girl turned to Sirius, but he immediately sensed something was amiss. Her eyes were glazed, her movements unnatural. She was clearly possessed, though there was no visible specter of Tom Riddle. The possession hadn't progressed far enough for that. The voice that came from Evelyn's mouth was not her own. It was cold, calculating, and unmistakably male. Who are you? How did you get here? Only a parcel mouth could reach this place, and the only one I know of is Charles Potter. I expected him, or perhaps that meddlesome Dumbledore. Sirius smirked, falling easily into the role Harry had prepared him for. Shows how little you know. Many old families, like the Blacks, have had this talent. We just keep it quiet. Now, who might you be? Some dusty old ghost with delusions of grandeur. The possessed girl's face contorted with anger. I am Lord Voldemort, the voice hissed. Sirius gasped dramatically, channeling his inner thespian. No. It can't be. The dreaded you-know-who, possessing a schoolgirl? How the mighty have fallen. Who are you really, old pervert? The possessed heir bristled. I am not an old pervert. I am Tom Riddle, a young Slytherin prefect. Sirius raised an eyebrow, his voice dripping with sarcasm. There you go lying again. First, you said you were Voldemort, and now you say you're Tom Riddle. Make up your mind, old chapter. I am both, the possessed heir snarled, and then proceeded to demonstrate how the name Voldemort was an anagram of Tom Marvolo Riddle. Sirius collapsed to the floor in a fit of exaggerated laughter. That's how the name Voldemort came about? It's too funny. I can't wait to tell all the pure-blood Death Eaters that their lord was playing word games. What's next? A secret handshake? You dare mock me? The possessed heir snarled with her wand now pointed towards Sirius. I am the greatest sorcerer in the world. I am going to torture you. Oh, I don't know about that, Sirius drawled. I've heard Dumbledore can do a mean tap dance. Can you top that, Voldy? Just when a furious Riddle was going to cast the killing curse on Sirius, a bright green light flashed through the chamber, striking the possessed Evelyn and sending her wand flying. Before Tom Riddle could react, Sirius's voice rang out, Petrificus totalis. The girl's body went rigid, frozen in place. The soul of Tom Riddle was bewildered. One moment he was seething with anger, the next he found himself wandless and immobilized, defeated so easily. He, Lord Voldemort, outsmarted by this puny adversary. As if things couldn't get worse for the Dark Lord, a shimmering ward suddenly sprang up around them, cutting off any commands of Tom Riddle from reaching the basilisk hidden behind the statue. It was then that Harry pulled off his invisibility cloak, grinning at his godfather. "Nice work, Padfoot. You should consider a career in theatre." Sirius chuckled, relief was evident in his voice. "And you, pup, could give Mad Eye a run for his money in the stealth department." Sirius then began searching Evelyn's robes for the Horcrux, while Tom Riddle futilely tried to resist, unable to move. Finally, Sirius extracted the diary, causing a flicker of fear in Evelyn's possessed eyes. Handing the diary to Harry, Sirius said, "I've had my turn, now it's yours. Destroy it and make this annoying git disappear." "Very well," Harry replied. He had not told him the fact that he had already destroyed many Horcruxes already. He couldn't pass up the opportunity for more soul reinforcement and strengthening. Tom Riddle, realizing what was about to happen, was terrified. In desperation, he tried to command the basilisk in Parseltongue to rescue him and kill these wizards. But thanks to Harry's ward, no sound could reach the snake. Harry raised his wand and cast the Horcrux destroying spell at the diary. A brilliant white light erupted from his wand, engulfing the diary. Tom Riddle screamed in agony, but within seconds, he was no more. The white light rebounded and struck Harry, suffusing him with power. "How do you feel? Any stronger?" Sirius asked, watching his godson closely. Harry paused, assessing the changes within him. "I feel something. Not entirely sure what." This time around destroying the Horcrux, Harry did notice a significant improvement. Given that the diary was Voldemort's first Horcrux and contained the largest chunk of his soul, it provided Harry with the most substantial boost yet. He could already sense his mind becoming clearer and his magic growing stronger. Sirius nodded. "Good. You'll need that strength when this git finally resurrects himself. Who knows how many soul anchors this monster had created for himself. We'll destroy them all eventually," Harry assured him. "Thanks to you, this was much easier than the battle I'd planned." They shared a moment of triumph, savoring their well-executed plan. Without a single spell cast in battle, they had saved Evelyn and destroyed the Horcrux. As the echoes of their victory faded, Harry and Sirius turned their attention to the unconscious Evelyn. With a gentle levitation charm, they carefully lifted her off the damp chamber floor. "Let's get her out of here," Sirius said, his voice low. "We'll need to have her checked over by Madame Pomfrey." As they made their way back through the winding tunnels, Evelyn's limp form floating between them, Sirius spoke again. "We'll come back with reinforcements, Harry. That basilisk needs to be dealt with soon. It's a hidden danger for the school." Harry nodded and followed Sirius quietly. He had his own plans for the basilisk, but Sirius didn't need to know that. Chapter 176, Aftermath in the Headmaster's Office. As Harry and Sirius emerged from the Chamber of Secrets, their robes still damp from the underground passages, they rushed Evelyn Rosier to the hospital wing. The corridors were eerily quiet, their footsteps echoing off the stone walls. When they burst through the infirmary doors, Madame Pomfrey's eyes widened in shock, her hand flying to her mouth. "Merlin's beard!" she exclaimed, hurrying over to them. "Is that Miss Rosier? Did you two actually venture into the Chamber of Secrets to save her?" Her voice was a mixture of awe and concern as she quickly assessed the unconscious girl. Sirius nodded grimly, gently laying Rosier on the nearest bed. "She's been through quite an ordeal, Poppy," he said, his voice low and serious. "I'm afraid it's a case of long-term dark possession." Madame Pomfrey gasped, her experienced hands already moving to examine Evelyn. "Possession? But how? It's a sensitive matter with many secrets involved," Sirius interrupted. "We'll explain everything to Dumbledore. For now, please treat her for the effects of dark possession. Dumbledore can fill you in on the details later." As they left the hospital wing, Harry turned to Sirius. "Padfoot, after Madame Pomfrey's done, could you take Rosier to Cordelia? I want to make sure there are no lasting effects from the Horcrux." Sirius nodded. "Good thinking, pup. I'll make sure she gets the best care." On their way to Dumbledore's office, Harry broached a delicate subject. "Sirius, about telling Dumbledore. You're wondering if we should reveal everything about the Horcrux?" Sirius guessed. Harry nodded. "We can be truthful about tonight's events, including the Horcrux, but I think we should keep our prior knowledge about Voldemort creating Horcruxes and the other destroyed Horcrux to ourselves. It could jeopardize the Black family's neutrality. Sirius considered this for a moment before agreeing. You're right, Harry. No need to paint a target on our backs if this somehow leaks. The fewer people who know about our involvement with the other Horcruxes, the better. We'll stick to the facts of tonight's events only. As they approached the gargoyle guarding Dumbledore's office, Sirius gave the password, and they ascended the moving spiral staircase. When they entered the circular office, they were surprised to find the headmaster wasn't alone. The Golden Trio, Charles, Ron, and Hermione, were there, looking both excited and anxious. Charlie! Sirius exclaimed, breaking into a grin. It's been too long. You were a baby when I last saw you. His eyes softened with a mix of nostalgia and regret. Charles beamed back. Are you serious, Black? Padfoot? I've heard so much about you from Uncle Moony. Why haven't I seen you in the past? Sirius chuckled, though there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. Adult business, I'm afraid. You kids need not worry about all that complicated stuff. Charles persisted, his curiosity evident. My parents and Moony always say the same thing. Never mind that now, Sirius, are you the or the Ministry sent to handle this Chamber of Secrets incident? As Sirius nodded in confirmation, Charles could barely contain his excitement. He launched into an animated explanation, words tumbling out in a rush. You're just in time. We've found the Chamber of Secrets. We were just telling Professor Dumbledore all about it. Sirius held up a hand, his expression a mix of amusement and pride. I'm impressed you managed to figure it out, truly I am. But I'm afraid we've beaten you to the punch this time. The girl's been rescued and the heir defeated. Madame Pomfrey is tending to her right now in the hospital wing. No adventure for you kiddos this time, but excellent work all the same. The room fell silent for a moment before erupting in questions. Dumbledore, Harry noticed, looked immensely relieved. The twinkle in his blue eyes was brighter than it had been in weeks, clearly happy that the trouble had been resolved. Harry knew the headmaster had taken quite a hit to his reputation for not keeping Hogwarts safe under his watch. Hermione, looking crestfallen, asked, "But how did you find it so quickly? It took us ages of research and we even had to beg Moaning Myrtle before we finally got the information we needed about the Chamber of Secrets from her." Sirius, with a hint of mischief in his eyes, simply pointed at Harry, who had been quietly observing the exchange, content to be an audience to the unfolding scene. Hermione's face fell further, knowing from Harry's reputation and grades that he was better than her. But she didn't give up. Harry just had a few more years in the wizarding world than her. She was determined to surpass him eventually. What about the basilisk? Charles asked eagerly, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and excitement. Did you fight it? How big was it? We didn't actually confront it, Sirius explained, his tone becoming more serious. We managed to outwit the heir and defeat him before he could summon the beast. The basilisk remains a problem to be dealt with, but the immediate threat has been neutralized. Seeing the children's undiminished curiosity, Sirius added gravely, there are some highly sensitive matters involved in this incident that we can't discuss openly, especially not with children. Albus, perhaps we could speak more privately. Dumbledore nodded sagely, turning to the Golden Trio. Children, I must ask you to return to your dormitory now. It's quite late, and I'm sure your housemates are wondering where you are. Charles immediately protested, his voice tinged with desperation. But Grandpa, I've been involved in this from the start. I need to know what's happening. Please, can't I stay? Dumbledore considered the boy for a long moment, his blue eyes twinkling with something that might have been approval. After what seemed like an eternity, he nodded. Very well, Charlie. You've shown that you can keep a secret, and you are, uniquely involved in these matters. You may stay. However, you two friends will have to leave and no secretly telling them everything later. Harry felt a twinge of unease at this decision. He knew that Charles, lacking any form of occlumency shields, was essentially an open book to any skilled legilimens. However, given that the matter wasn't of utmost secrecy and there weren't many accomplished legilimens in Britain, he decided not to intervene. As Ron and Hermione reluctantly left the office, casting longing looks over their shoulders, Sirius began to recount the night's events in detail. Charles listened with rapt attention, occasionally interjecting with questions that Sirius answered as best he could without revealing too much. When Sirius mentioned the Horcrux, Dumbledore's eyes widened almost imperceptibly behind his half-moon spectacles. The usual twinkle in his eyes dimmed, replaced by a grave seriousness that seemed to age him considerably. "A Horcrux," Dumbledore said, his voice barely above a whisper. "This confirms my worst fears. Voldemort is indeed still tethered to the world of the living." He turned to Charles, who looked confused and on the verge of asking a question. "Charles, I must insist that you do not ask what a Horcrux is. It is a form of magic so dark, so evil, that you are not yet old enough to bear that knowledge." Harry, seeing an opportunity to move the conversation along, reached into his robes and produced the destroyed diary. He handed it to Dumbledore, who examined it closely, his long fingers tracing over the name T.M. Riddle embossed on the cover. Thanks to the method Harry had used to destroy it, the book appeared largely intact, with no visible holes or damage. "What should we do about the basilisk, Albus?" Sirius asked, bringing the focus back to the immediate threat. "I can contact Amelia, and we can assemble a team of our best Aurors to deal with it." Dumbledore shook his head, a determined glint in his eye. "That won't be necessary, Sirius. Once the students have been safely evacuated tomorrow, I will deal with the creature myself." Charles, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. "Professor, can I come with you? I can help open the entrance to the chamber. I'm a Parselmouth, remember." Dumbledore regarded Charles for a long moment before nodding slowly. "You may accompany me to the entrance, Charles. However, I will only allow you as far as the main hall Sirius described. After that, Fawkes will take you to safety. It's far too dangerous for you to be present during the confrontation with the basilisk." As Harry and Sirius, their work for the night done, prepared to take their leave, the office door suddenly swung open. The unexpected visitor who stepped into the room made the temperature seem to drop several degrees. Lucius Malfoy, resplendent in his black robes and radiating an aura of barely concealed contempt, surveyed the room with cold grey eyes. His gaze lingered on Harry and Sirius with particular disdain before settling on Dumbledore. "Ah, Dumbledore," Malfoy drawled, his voice smooth as silk but laced with venom. "I see I'm interrupting quite the gathering. How convenient." Chapter 177, The Diary, the Elf, and the Arrest. The tension in Dumbledore's office escalated as Lucius Malfoy strode in, his presence commanding attention. Harry and Sirius, who had been about to leave, paused, their curiosity piqued by this unexpected arrival. They were eager to discover the purpose behind Malfoy's late-night visit. Trailing behind Malfoy, heavily bandaged and cowering, was Dobby the house elf. It was Harry's first time seeing the lovable yet troublesome little guy in person. Interestingly, Dobby's large eyes were fixed solely on Charles, not even sparing a glance for Harry. Dumbledore rose from his chair, his face a mask of calm. "What brings you here at this late hour, Lucius?" he inquired, his tone neutral. A smirk played on Malfoy's lips as he produced a roll of parchment from his robes. "The Board of Governors has reached a decision, Dumbledore," he announced with barely concealed triumph. "In light of recent events, they feel you've lost your touch. This is an order of suspension." A tense silence blanketed the room, broken only by Dumbledore's measured response. "How did you manage to persuade the board to sign this suspension order, Lucius? Your influence isn't what it used to be. If I recall correctly, it was I who facilitated your reinstatement on the board after your dismissal." Lucius's eyes narrowed. "That was a deal, Dumbledore. I owe you nothing. Besides, I didn't need to exert any influence. The recent events at the school were sufficient motivation for them to sign the order." As he finished speaking, Lucius shot a venomous glare at Sirius. It was clear that he blamed Sirius and Arcturus Black for his diminished political clout. Sirius, for his part, responded with a mocking smile and a few childish faces, which only served to further irritate Malfoy. Without a word, Dumbledore took the papers and tossed them into the fireplace. The parchment quickly turned to ash. "How dare you?" Lucius sputtered, his face reddening with anger. "This blatant disregard for the board's orders will have severe repercussions." Dumbledore remained unperturbed. "I think not, Lucius," he replied calmly. "You see, before your arrival, I was contacted by the other 11 governors. They informed me that you had coerced them into signing the order a few days ago. However, yesterday's incident with Miss Rosier has made them reconsider. They've rescinded the suspension order, believing that I am, after all, the best person to handle this situation. They shared some rather disturbing stories, Lucius. Several of them claimed that you threatened to curse their families if they didn't agree to suspend me. Malfoy's already pale complexion turned ashen, though his eyes still blazed with fury. So, he sneered, trying to regain his composure, have you put an end to these attacks? Have you apprehended the culprit? We have, Dumbledore confirmed, a slight smile playing on his lips. Well? Malfoy demanded sharply. Who is it? The same individual as before, Lucius, Dumbledore replied. However, this time, Lord Voldemort was working through an intermediary. By means of this diary. He held up the small black book, watching Malfoy's reaction intently. For Harry, it felt like watching a scene from the Harry Potter movies. He marveled at how, despite the numerous changes he had made, this important moment still unfolded in much the same way. As this thought crossed his mind, Harry's attention was drawn to Charles, who appeared to be communicating through gestures with Dobby. Remembering the scene where Dobby gains his freedom, Harry found himself hoping that Charles will find a way to replicate that moment. Being close to Myra, Harry had a soft spot for house elves and wished to see Dobby liberated from the Malfoy service. Dumbledore's voice brought Harry's focus back to the conversation. It seems to be a significant artifact of Voldemort's. Do you have any idea how it found its way into the school, Lucius? One would think an item of such importance would be kept under lock and key. It's curious how it ended up at Hogwarts, in the hands of a vulnerable young girl. I see. Malfoy responded slowly, his face growing even paler. Dumbledore continued, his tone deceptively casual. Let us hope Lord Voldemort never returns. If he does, and discovers that his precious diary was destroyed due to the carelessness of a trusted follower, his wrath would be terrible indeed. Enough, perhaps, to drive someone to madness through torture. The implications of his actions seemed to dawn on Malfoy, fear flashing across his features. The others in the room watched this shift in Malfoy's demeanor with barely concealed satisfaction. Sirius, too, now understood Malfoy's role in bringing the Horcrux into Hogwarts. Suddenly, Charles broke the tense silence. Don't you want to know how that diary got into Hogwarts, Mr. Malfoy? Lucius rounded on him, his voice sharp. How should I know how the book got into Hogwarts? Because you gave it to her, Charles accused. I heard from your son that you donated school books to Evelyn Rosier this year. Did you slip the diary in with them? Malfoy's hands clenched and unclenched, his composure slipping. Prove it, he hissed. Oh, no one will be able to do that, Dumbledore interjected, smiling at Harry. Not now that Riddle has vanished from the book. However, Lucius, I would advise you to consider how you might explain to your master the loss of something so precious to him. Good luck. You'll need it. We're leaving, Dobby. Malfoy snarled, yanking open the door. As the elf hurried towards him, Malfoy viciously kicked him through the doorway. The sound of Dobby's pain squeals echoed down the corridor. As the tension in the room began to dissipate, Charles's gaze fell upon the diary on Dumbledore's desk. Professor, he said hesitantly, may I have that diary? Dumbledore regarded Charles curiously over his half-moon spectacles. And why, may I ask, do you want it, Charles? I just need to do something with it. I'll return it soon, Charles replied, his voice growing more confident. After a moment's consideration, Dumbledore nodded. Very well, Charles. But do be careful with it. Charles quickly grabbed the diary, stuffed it into one of his socks, and dashed out of the office without another word. Harry, anticipating what was about to unfold, turned to Sirius. You might want to follow him. I have a feeling something interesting is about to happen. Sirius raised an eyebrow but nodded, hurrying after Charles. In the corridor outside, Sirius caught up with Charles just as the boy reached Lucius Malfoy. Mr. Malfoy, Charles gasped, skidding to a halt, I've got something for you. He thrust the smelly sock into Lucius Malfoy's hand. What the? Malfoy ripped the sock off the diary, tossed it aside, and then glared furiously at Charles. You can laugh now, Charles Potter, but your days are numbered. You'll meet a sticky end, he said softly. Turning to leave, he barked, Come, Dobby. I said, come. But Dobby didn't move. He was holding up Charles's sock, staring at it in wonder. Master has given Dobby a sock, the elf said in amazement. Master gave it to Dobby. What's that? Malfoy spat. What did you say? Dobby has got a sock, Dobby repeated in disbelief. Master threw it, and Dobby caught it, and Dobby is free. Lucius Malfoy stood frozen, staring at the elf. Then, in a flash of rage, he drew his wand and pointed it at Charles. You've lost me, my servant, boy. Avada! Sirius had his wand out, ready to save Charles. But Dobby was quicker. You shall not harm Charlie Potter! He cried, snapping his fingers. A burst of magic sent Malfoy flying backwards. As Malfoy scrambled to his feet, searching for his wand, Sirius stepped forward, his own wand at the ready. That's enough, Lucius, he said, his voice cold as ice. Threatening a student? Attempting to use an unforgivable? I'm afraid I'll have to place you under arrest. Malfoy's face drained of color as he realized the gravity of his situation. With a flick of his wand, Sirius conjured magical restraints. Let's return to the headmaster's office, Sirius declared. I'm sure he'll authorize the special use of his flu to get you behind bars. Turning to Charles, Sirius added, that was incredibly brave and incredibly foolish, Charles. Never do that again. Charles grinned sheepishly. I couldn't let him get away with it. And well, I wanted to help Dobby escape the horrible treatment he was enduring at the Malfoys. Sirius chuckled, ruffling Charles's hair. Come on, let's get back to Dumbledore's office. Harry, are you coming? Harry shook his head. No, I've had enough excitement for one night. Time to get some well-deserved sleep. Let me know what happens later. Sirius dragged Malfoy away, accompanied by Charles and an ecstatic Dobby. Harry hoped Malfoy would indeed be sent to Azkaban. Reducing the number of Voldemort's lieutenants before his inevitable return could only be beneficial. A part of him worried that Dumbledore might fall back on his tendency to give second chances and allow Malfoy to walk free. With these thoughts swirling in his mind, Harry made his way out of the corridor towards the grand staircases. However, as he stepped onto the moving stairs, he didn't go towards Ravenclaw Tower where his dormitory was located. Instead, he chose a different path, one that led to a different part of the castle. The night, it seemed, was far from over for him. Chapter 178, Harry vs the King of Serpents. Harry, now back in the depths of the Chamber of Secrets, swiftly changed into his battle robes and unsheathed his sword. The cool, damp air of the ancient chamber filled his lungs as he steeled himself for the impending confrontation. The weight of the danger he was going into pressed heavily upon him as he made his way towards the hall housing Slytherin's statue, preparing to face the legendary basilisk. Suddenly, an unexpected event unfolded. The air resonated with the melodious sound of Phoenix song, and to Harry's astonishment, Dumbledore's Phoenix, Fawkes, appeared seemingly out of nowhere. The majestic bird soared towards Harry, the Sorting Hat clutched firmly in its talons. Confusion etched itself across Harry's face. How had anyone known about his plan to confront the basilisk? And why was Fawkes here? He hadn't shown any particular loyalty to Dumbledore that would warrant the Phoenix's assistance. The bird's arrival was both mysterious and unwelcome, as it raised the possibility that Dumbledore might discover his secret mission. Sensing Harry's doubts, the Sorting Hat spoke up in its gravelly voice. I knew you were going after the basilisk, Mr. Potter. The castle informed me, and I thought you might need some help. Fawkes was kind enough to give me a lift. Harry's brow furrowed as he processed this information. So Hogwarts is sentient? Thanks for confirming my doubts. While I appreciate your thought, Sorting Hat, your actions may have leaked my secret adventure to the headmaster. That's the last thing I wanted to happen. The Sorting Hat was quick to reassure him. Don't worry, Mr. Potter. Fawkes has promised to keep our meeting a secret. As if to confirm this, Fawkes let out a melodious trill and nodded its head. As for the castle being sentient, the Hat continued, I'm not entirely sure. It can't communicate like I can, but there have been instances where the castle has reacted or sent messages in some form. It leads me to believe that Hogwarts is at least semi-sentient. Perhaps it's a result of the vast amount of magic surrounding and being used within the castle. It may have given birth to a form of consciousness. Harry nodded, absorbing this new information. Just as he was about to inquire how the Sorting Hat intended to assist him in battling the basilisk, his attention was drawn to a glint of silver emerging from within the hat. With a mixture of excitement and urgency, he reached in and pulled out a magnificent sword, its blade gleaming in the dim light of the chamber. The Sword of Gryffindor, the Sorting Hat announced proudly. It presents itself to a true Gryffindor in times of need. I hope it will be of great help in your upcoming battle. Harry's confusion was evident as he examined the sword. But I'm a Ravenclaw. I thought the sword of Gryffindor only chose brave Gryffindors. The hat chuckled, a sound reminiscent of rustling parchment. Perhaps in-house affiliation, but you are also the inheritor of Gryffindor and possess the traits of a true Gryffindor in your heart. Everything that happens in the castle is known to me, including the inheritance you've gained. The sword recognizes both your lineage and your courage. Harry sighed, realizing the implications. It seemed that none of his actions over the past few years at Hogwarts had been hidden from the Sorting Hat, or perhaps from Hogwarts itself, which then informed the Hat. Unable to guard against this level of monitoring, Harry decided to try his best to ignore this unsettling information for now. Thanking the Hat, Harry gripped the sword firmly, immediately noting its perfect balance. It was superior even to the sword he had received from his Gryffindor inheritance. With a twinge of nostalgia, Harry realized his beloved inherited sword was about to lose its position as his primary weapon. "I'll take it from here, Mr. Hat," Harry said with determination. "I promised to handle the basilisk if it went rogue when I accepted Gryffindor's inheritance. I intend to keep that promise." The Hat's tone turned solemn. "It's for the best. Put that poor creature out of its misery. The heir of Slytherin's actions have driven it mad. It's no longer the noble guardian it once was. An accident led to it breaking the rules set by Salazar, and since then, the poor creature has not been itself." This revelation confirmed Harry's suspicions about the cause of the basilisk's descent into madness and its attacks on Hogwarts students. He theorized that when Tom Riddle first opened the chamber, Moaning Myrtle might have accidentally seen him emerging with the basilisk. Afraid of discovery, Riddle likely commanded the basilisk to kill the intruder. The basilisk, obeying the order of the heir, killed the girl with its deadly stare. However, in doing so, it broke one of the fundamental rules set by its master, Salazar Slytherin. Whether through some magical failsafe or the psychological impact of betraying its master, the basilisk had been driven to madness, becoming a senseless creature. As Fawkes and the Sorting Hat departed in a burst of flame, Harry steeled himself for the battle ahead. He carefully stowed away his inherited sword and began practicing swings with the sword of Gryffindor as he made his way to the basilisk's lair. Upon reaching the hall with the statue, Harry approached the towering effigy of Salazar Slytherin, its stone face looming ominously in the dim light. Taking a deep breath, he spoke in Parseltongue, his voice echoing through the chamber, "Speak to me, Slytherin, greatest of the Hogwarts Four." The statue's mouth began to open, revealing a dark tunnel within. Harry's heart pounded as he waited for the basilisk to emerge. The massive serpent slithered out, its movements erratic and aggressive. Its scales gleamed in the dim light, and its enormous body seemed to fill the entire chamber. Thanks to his special glasses, Harry could look directly at the basilisk without fear of its petrifying gaze. Before engaging in combat, and noticing the King of Snakes' initial inaction, Harry attempted to reason with it. He spoke again in Parseltongue, his voice reverberating in the cavernous chamber. "Great Serpent of Slytherin, hear me. The heir who commanded you is gone. You no longer need to obey those destructive orders. You can return to your slumber until the school truly needs your protection." Seeing no response from the basilisk, which merely stared at him with crazed eyes, Harry continued, "Let me help you. We can find a way to heal your mind." Finally, the basilisk responded, but not with meaningful words. Instead, it let out a series of incoherent hisses, its speech jumbled and nonsensical. "Blood, must obey, kill, protect. Slytherin's will, pain, so much pain." It was clear that the creature's mind was far too gone to be reasoned with. Realizing that diplomacy had failed, Harry reached for his prepared roosters, hoping to end the battle before it truly began. He still couldn't fathom why the crow of a rooster was lethal to such a massive and powerful creature as the basilisk before him. However, things did not go according to plan. As soon as Harry produced the roosters, he felt a surge of ancient magic. The birds in his hand suddenly burst into flames, turning to ash almost instantly. Harry barely managed to throw them away in time to avoid being burned himself. "Clever, Slytherin," Harry muttered, realizing the founder had safeguarded against his pet's known weakness. "You really did think of everything, didn't you?" With this realization, Harry knew a fight to death was unavoidable. With a deep breath, Harry readied himself for the challenge ahead, knowing that his years of night training and preparation were about to be put to the ultimate test. Chapter 179, The Fierce Battle. The enormity of the situation settled upon Harry like a heavy cloak. With the roosters neutralized and reason proving ineffective, he was left with no choice but to engage in direct combat. Gripping the sword of Gryffindor tightly in his right hand, he faced the colossal serpent, his heart pounding a fierce rhythm in his chest. The basilisk towered above him, its scales gleaming ominously in the dim light of the chamber. "Come on then," Harry muttered, his voice barely above a whisper, steeling himself for the battle ahead. "Let's end this quickly. It's past my bedtime already." The basilisk, its patience worn thin by Harry's provocations, struck first. Its massive head lunged forward with frightening speed, jaws gaping wide enough to swallow Harry whole. "Kill, must kill." The basilisk's deranged hissing filled the chamber, sending chills down Harry's spine. Harry's instincts, honed by years of training, kicked in. He dove to the side, feeling the rush of air as the serpent's fangs snapped shut mere inches from where he'd been standing. As he rolled to his feet in one fluid motion, he slashed out with the sword of Gryffindor, scoring a glancing blow along the basilisk's scales. Sparks flew as the legendary blade met the basilisk's near-impenetrable hide. The cut was shallow, more of an insult than an injury, but it was enough to enrage the beast further. Suddenly, its tail whipped around with unexpected speed. Caught off guard by the rapidness of the movement, Harry had no time to react. The blow caught him squarely in the ribs, sending him flying across the chamber like a rag doll. "Bloody hell!" Harry gasped as he slammed into a pillar, the impact knocking the wind out of him. He hit the ground hard, the cold stone unforgiving against his body. But his enhanced physique, a result of years of night training, allowed him to spring back to his feet almost instantly. His armor had absorbed most of the impact, but he could feel the beginnings of bruises forming beneath it. There was no time to catch his breath or assess his injuries. The basilisk's head came crashing down again, its fangs gleaming menacingly in the low light. Harry barely managed to raise the sword in a defensive stance. The impact jarred his arm, threatening to knock the sword from his grasp. Muscles straining, he pushed back against the enormous weight, gritting his teeth with the effort. Too quick for its size, Harry thought, his mind racing to formulate a strategy. "I need to create some space." With a roar of effort that echoed through the chamber, he managed to deflect the basilisk's head to the side, its fangs scraping against the stone floor with a sound like nails on a chalkboard. Seizing the moment, Harry launched into a flurry of strikes, his blade a blur of motion. The basilisk's scales were tough, but under the onslaught of Harry's enhanced strength and the magical sword, they began to give way. Dark ichor oozed from a series of cuts along the serpent's neck. "Pain, so much pain!" The basilisk hissed, its voice a mixture of agony and rage that almost made Harry pity the creature. The basilisk reeled back, thrashing wildly in its fury. Its massive body smashed into the chamber's pillars, sending debris raining down. Harry was forced to dive and roll to avoid being crushed by the falling stones. As he came up from his roll, he felt a searing pain across his back. One of the basilisk's fangs had grazed him during one of the earlier confrontations, leaving a long, shallow cut. The venom burned like fire, but thanks to his immunity, it was more of an annoyance than a mortal threat. "That's going to leave a mark," Harry grimaced, pushing through the pain and forcing himself to focus on the fight. The battle raged on, becoming a deadly dance of lunges and dodges. The basilisk, driven by its madness, attacked relentlessly. Its massive head struck out again and again, each time missing Harry by mere inches. Harry's reflexes were pushed to their limits as he ducked, rolled, and leaped to avoid the deadly fangs. When opportunities presented themselves, Harry struck back. He managed to land several blows with the sword of Gryffindor, leaving deep gashes in the basilisk's scales. Dark ichor flowed from these wounds, making the chamber floor slick and treacherous. Despite its injuries, the basilisk showed no signs of slowing down. Its wild thrashing increased, making it harder for Harry to predict its movements. The chamber echoed with the sounds of their battle, the basilisk's furious hisses, the clash of sword against scales, and Harry's labored breathing. In a moment of desperation, the basilisk lunged forward, its jaws snapping shut just inches from Harry's face. Harry dove to the side, rolling across the damp chamber floor. As he scrambled to his feet, he realized he had inadvertently positioned himself dangerously close to the basilisk's thrashing tail. Before Harry could regain his footing and move to safer ground, the basilisk's tail whipped around again. However, this time, Harry was prepared for the strike. He leapt over the sweeping tail with acrobatic grace, using his momentum to run up the basilisk's body. The serpent twisted violently, trying to dislodge him. Harry's enhanced strength was pushed to its limits as he fought to keep his footing on the shifting scales. "Just a little, Further, Harry panted, inching his way towards the basilisk's head, knowing that was where he needed to strike to end this. Chapter 180, The Night Awakens. Reaching the basilisk's head, Harry raised the sword of Gryffindor high, preparing for what he hoped would be the killing blow. But the serpent had one last trick up its sleeve. It suddenly reared up, catapulting Harry into the air. For a heart-stopping moment, he was weightless, suspended above the Chamber of Secrets. "This is a good chance," Harry muttered, his mind racing as gravity reasserted itself and he plummeted towards the basilisk's gaping maw. Time seemed to slow as Harry twisted in mid-air, angling his body towards the serpent's open mouth. Instead of trying to avoid it, he aimed straight for it, a plan forming in his mind. As the massive jaws engulfed him, Harry acted with lightning speed. Using his enhanced strength and the momentum from the fall, Harry kicked downwards with both feet, forcing the basilisk's lower jaw open even wider. The basilisk's head snapped back, a pained hiss escaping its throat. The sound reverberated through the chamber, a testament to the creature's agony. Now with more room to maneuver inside the basilisk's mouth, Harry didn't waste a second. Gripping the sword of Gryffindor with both hands, he thrust upwards with all his might, aiming for the soft, unprotected roof of the basilisk's mouth. The legendary blade pierced through the flesh with ease, driving deep into the creature's brain. Harry roared with the effort, pushing the sword into its hilt, feeling the resistance give way as the blade sank deeper. The basilisk's entire body went rigid, and then began to convulse violently. Its death throes threatened to dislodge Harry, but he clung grimly to the sword, using it as an anchor. But victory came at a cost. One of the basilisk's fangs sank deep into Harry's arm, tearing through his robes and armor. The pain was immediate and intense, like liquid fire spreading through his veins, but Harry held on grimly to the sword's hilt. As the life began to fade from the basilisk's eyes, Harry heard a final, coherent thought from the creature. "Thank you, for freeing me, from this torment." The words, filled with relief and gratitude, echoed in Harry's mind as the great serpent let out its final breath. With a last, earth-shaking shudder, the basilisk collapsed. Harry, his strength waning from the exertion and the venom seeping into his system from numerous small cuts, barely managed to extract himself from the creature's mouth before it hit the ground. He stumbled away, his vision blurring and his limbs feeling like lead. The battle was won, but Harry knew he wasn't out of danger yet. The immunity he had gained from the ritual he had done a few months back, it seemed, was not enough to protect him against this large amount of basilisk venom. Harry really hoped Fox would, for some reason, come back and give him some of its tears. His stock of phoenix tears had run out after he had used it for the ritual. Thinking his immunity foolproof, he had not urgently acquired more phoenix tears. And it looked like this carelessness might prove costly. Harry somehow tried to stand up and make his way out. He needed to quickly get help. Even if he went to the hospital wing and got help from Madame Pomfrey, leaking all his secrets to Dumbledore, it was worth it. Living was the priority. Repercussions he could take care of later. As Harry struggled to his feet, something unexpected happened. His heart, which had been racing from the exertion of the battle, suddenly began to beat with a new, powerful rhythm. It was as if each beat was sending waves of energy through his body. Harry gasped, recognizing the sensation from his years of night training. This was at the moment he had been working towards for so long. The final step in becoming a true knight was upon him. The Chamber of Secrets faded from his awareness as Harry focused inward, following the familiar patterns of the night breathing technique. With each breath, he could feel the life energy surging through his body, following the paths he had diligently practiced for years. Suddenly, deep within his core, Harry felt something shift. It was as if a seed that had been dormant all this time had finally sprouted. The seed of life that marked the transition from an apprentice to a full-fledged knight had awakened. Energy exploded through Harry's body. His muscles, bones, and even his skin seemed to be changing, becoming denser, stronger. The basilisk venom that had been coursing through his veins was rapidly neutralized by this new, potent life force. Harry's senses sharpened dramatically. He could hear the faintest drip of water in the far corners of the chamber, smell the ancient stone and the fresh blood of the basilisk. His vision cleared, the blur replaced by a clarity he had never experienced before. As the transformation settled, Harry stood tall, marveling at the changes in his body. He felt invigorated, powerful in a way that was completely different from his magical strength. The exhaustion from the battle had vanished, replaced by a wellspring of energy that seemed limitless. "I did it," Harry whispered, flexing his hands and feeling the new strength coursing through them. "I'm a knight." The timing couldn't have been more perfect. In his moment of greatest need, when death seemed imminent, Harry had achieved what he had been striving for all these years. The challenge of facing the basilisk had pushed him to his limits, providing the final catalyst for his transformation. With renewed strength and energy, Harry turned his attention back to the fallen basilisk and the chamber around him. He was no longer in danger, but there was still much to be done. The chamber needed to be secured, and the basilisk's remains dealt with. As he stood there, the sword of Gryffindor still in his hand and the body of the basilisk at his feet, Harry was filled with a sense of accomplishment. He had overcome one of the greatest challenges he had ever faced, and in doing so, had taken the final step into becoming a true knight. However, even as he basked in the glow of his achievement, Harry knew that this was not the end of his journey. In fact, it was just the beginning. The path of a knight was one of continuous growth and challenges. There would be more battles to come, more obstacles to overcome. He gripped the sword of Gryffindor tightly, feeling its power resonating with his own newfound strength. The journey of a knight was just beginning, and Harry Potter was ready to meet it head-on. Chapter 181, Aftermath and Departure. With the basilisk defeated and his objective complete, Harry knew he had to act quickly to conceal the evidence of the battle. He couldn't risk anyone, especially Dumbledore, discovering what had truly transpired in the Chamber of Secrets. Even though everyone was already aware of his magical prowess and dueling strength, Harry was determined to keep his knight training and physical abilities a secret. This could serve as a second persona, potentially useful during covert operations. He reached into his robes and pulled out an expandable trunk, a special item he had acquired for just such an occasion. With practiced efficiency, he began the gruesome task of harvesting the basilisk's valuable parts. First, he carefully extracted the enormous fangs, each one as long as his forearm. The venom sacs came next, handled with extreme caution and stored in unbreakable vials. The eyes, despite their deadly power now nullified in death, were removed and preserved. Harry meticulously skinned the great serpent, knowing the hide alone was worth a fortune for its magical resistance properties. Some of these parts, he noted, were crucial ingredients for the animagus ritual he planned to attempt. As he worked, Harry couldn't help but marvel at the creature. Its size was truly staggering, and the quality of its parts spoke to its ancient and powerful nature. He harvested everything of value: blood, organs, bones, and even the meat, all of which he knew were highly sought after in various magical circles. The harvesting process took over an hour of tiring work even with the help of magic. Once complete, Harry turned his attention to repairing the damage caused by the battle. Reparo Maxima, Harry intoned, his wand sweeping in wide arcs. The shattered stone knitted itself back together, cracks sealed, and dust settled. He paid close attention to detail, ensuring that even the smallest signs of the battle were erased. The process was time-consuming and draining, but since Harry had not used much magic during the fight, he had plenty to spare. He repaired the gouges in the floor left by the basilisk's thrashing, smoothed out the marks left by his sword, and cleaned the blood splashed on the floor from both his injuries and those he had inflicted on the basilisk. Satisfied with his work in the main chamber, Harry turned his attention to the basilisk's lair. This was the only place he hadn't searched in the chamber, and he was hopeful of finding something valuable inside. He approached the entrance cautiously, unsure of what he might find. To his surprise, the lair was empty save for an enormous pile of shed basilisk skin. Harry's eyes widened at the sight. Basilisk skin was incredibly rare and valuable, perfect for crafting magic-resistant battlesuits. He had been unable to find any in the outside world, no matter how much money he offered. Now he had enough to last him many lifetimes. Curious, Harry muttered, examining the pile. It seemed the basilisk had been shedding its skin in one place for a very long time. As he investigated further, Harry discovered an intricate network of wards surrounding the lair. Upon closer inspection, he realized it was a magical hibernation mechanism, designed to keep the basilisk in a state of suspended animation. The basilisk would only wake up when the air calls for its help. Ingenious, Harry whispered, tracing the runes with his fingers. This must be how it survived for so long without food. The mechanism explained much: how the basilisk had lived for thousands of years, why it was always ravenous upon waking, and how it continued to grow despite long periods of inactivity. The magic sustained the creature, allowing it to shed its skin and grow even while dormant. Harry spent some time studying the wards, fascinated by their complexity and power. He made mental notes, knowing this kind of magic could be invaluable in the future. With the lair explored, Harry began to search for any hidden rooms or secret chambers that Salazar Slytherin might have left behind. Despite his thorough investigation, he found nothing. If there were any such secrets, they were hidden beyond his current ability to detect. Satisfied that he had done all he could, Harry made one final sweep of the chamber. He collected the shed basilisk skin, adding it to his already substantial haul in the expandable trunk. With everything cleaned, repaired, and harvested, the chamber looked as if no battle had ever taken place. Harry made his way back to the entrance, the sword of Gryffindor still in hand and the expandable trunk tucked safely in his robes. With a final hiss in Parseltongue, Harry sealed the chamber behind him. He didn't know what would happen when Dumbledore went after the basilisk, but he hoped nothing would leak about his actions. The best-case scenario was that Dumbledore wouldn't know the secret phrase to open the basilisk's lair, and that way, no one would know what had happened in the chamber about an hour ago. Anyway, Harry didn't have much to worry about. He had cleaned up the place to the best of his ability, and at worst, he would be suspected by Dumbledore. There would be no proof of what happened to the basilisk. Exhausted but satisfied, Harry finally returned to his dormitory. As he collapsed into bed, his mind was already racing with plans for the animagus ritual he was going to perform during the holidays. He couldn't wait to discover his rare animagus form of a magical creature. As sleep claimed him, Harry's last thought was of Dumbledore, who would arrive the next day to face a basilisk that was no longer there. The old wizard would find only an empty, pristine chamber, with no hint of a 1,000-year-old basilisk. Imagining that gave Harry a small smile and some sweet dreams. The next day, the Great Hall buzzed with nervous energy as students gathered for breakfast on what was to be their last morning at Hogwarts before the abrupt holiday. Harry, despite his exhaustion from the previous night's events and only a few hours of sleep, maintained a facade of normalcy as he sat with his friends at the Ravenclaw table. Suddenly, Dumbledore rose from his seat, his presence immediately commanding silence. "Students, I have some important news," he began, his voice carrying across the hall. "I am pleased to announce that the heir of Slytherin has been apprehended and the threat to our school neutralized. Miss Evelyn Rosier is safe and recovering well." A collective sigh of relief rippled through the hall, followed by excited murmurs. Furthermore, Dumbledore continued, his eyes twinkling as they found Harry, "I would like to recognize Mr. Hadrian Potter for his exceptional bravery and quick thinking. His actions, along with those of Auror Sirius Black, were instrumental in resolving this crisis. Therefore, it is my pleasure to award Mr. Potter with a special award for services to the school." Applause erupted as Harry, feigning surprise, made his way to the front to accept the award. As he returned to his seat, he was bombarded with questions and congratulations from his friends. "Harry, that's amazing!" Cedric exclaimed, clapping him on the back. "How did you do it?" Roger asked eagerly. Harry offered a modest smile. "I just happened to be in the right place at the right time," he said evasively. "Sirius did most of the work, really." As the excitement died down and students began to prepare for departure, Harry scanned the hall for Sirius but couldn't spot him. Curious about what had transpired after he left Dumbledore's office the previous night, Harry made his way outside to the Hogwarts Express. He found Sirius overseeing the students' boarding, looking tired but satisfied. When Sirius spotted Harry, he pulled him aside with a grin. "Quite a night, eh?" Sirius said, his voice low. "Bet you're wondering what happened with Malfoy." Harry nodded, and Sirius continued, "Well, since Dobby interrupted him before he could fully cast the killing curse, we couldn't make attempted murder charges stick. But," he added, "Dumbledore came up with an alternative solution." "What kind of solution?" Harry asked, intrigued. "Let's just say Lucius Malfoy's vault at Gringotts is considerably lighter this morning," Sirius chuckled. "Dumbledore negotiated a hefty compensation package for the Potters. Between that and grandfather calling in all the old loans and cancelling business deals, the Malfoys are practically penniless now." Harry couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction at this news. This cut away a lot of the financial resources of the Death Eaters. They wouldn't hold that much influence in the Ministry of Magic anymore. As the final call for boarding sounded, Harry bid farewell to Sirius and joined his friends on the train. The journey back to London was filled with excited chatter about the recent events and speculation about what the next term might bring. Harry, however, remained quiet for much of the journey. He was tired and caught up on sleep during the trip. Everyone, knowing he was up late the previous night saving Miss Rosier and taking on the heir of Slytherin, let him rest undisturbed. As the Hogwarts Express pulled into platform 9 3/4, students began to disembark. Harry took a deep breath, gathered his things, and stepped off the train. He had become a knight last night, and now he was eager to explore his new abilities. In the chaos of the previous evening, he hadn't had time to fully assess what he had gained from his transformation. Harry's mind raced with anticipation, wondering about the extent of his enhanced strength, speed, and senses. He was particularly curious about how his newfound knight abilities would interact with his magical powers. On top of that, he couldn't wait to begin the animagus ritual, hoping to unlock a rare magical creature form. As he made his way through the crowded platform, Harry felt a surge of excitement for the upcoming holidays. Chapter 182, Holidays and New Strengths. With a soft crack, Harry appeared in the entrance hall of Black Castle. The familiar sight of the grand staircase and the portraits of his black ancestors lining the walls greeted him. "Master Harry," Myra said, her large eyes shining with pride, "Master Arcturus and Master Sirius are waiting for you in the study." Harry nodded and made his way. As he approached the study, muffled voices engaged in intense discussion reached his ears. It seemed Sirius was recounting the events of the previous night to Arcturus. Knocking softly, Harry entered to find Arcturus seated behind his massive oak desk, with Sirius pacing back and forth. Both men looked up as he entered, their faces a mixture of concern and relief. "Harry!" Arcturus exclaimed, gesturing for him to take a seat. "Sirius has been filling me in on the events at Hogwarts. It seems you've had quite an adventure." Harry settled into one of the plush armchairs, feeling the weight of the past few days settle on his shoulders. "That's one way to put it," he said with a wry smile. Arcturus leaned forward, his eyes sharp despite his advanced age. "So, Voldemort's real name was Tom Riddle. I had heard about him. A charming and smart young lad during his years at Hogwarts who suddenly went missing. I had assumed he had left the wizarding world for better opportunities since he was a Muggle-born. Now it looks like he was a Squib-born from the line of Gaunts. To think all the blood supremacists have been following a half-blood to cause chaos and death in the wizarding world. Many old families have been destroyed and some to near extinction by the actions of that crazy Dark Lord." Sirius, who had stopped pacing, chimed in, "It looks like Dumbledore knew his real identity for a long time. Why didn't he expose him? That would have made a dent in Voldemort's followers." Arcturus shook his head, his expression clouded. "No idea. No one knows what goes on in his mind. Over the years, he has done things that make no sense. Let's forget it. So, one more Horcrux down. I didn't think he would leave one with the Malfoy brat. The boy will be in so much trouble when Voldemort comes back and learns what happened to it. 2 Horcruxes down and who knows how many more to go." Harry, seeing an opportunity to broach the subject of Horcruxes, spoke up, "Actually, it's 3 down. I stumbled upon another one at Hogwarts when looking for its secrets. It was in a room known to Hogwarts elves as the Come-and-Go room." Sirius's eyes widened in surprise. "Good job, Harry. Come-and-Go room? I thought I had explored all the secret places in the school. It looks like we missed some." Encouraged by their interest, Harry continued, "I also have another idea where another one could be." Arcturus leaned forward, intrigued. "Go on." "With Bellatrix," Harry explained. "Since Malfoy had one, I'm sure Bellatrix, whom Voldemort trusted a lot, would have one too. I just have no idea where she could have hidden it." Harry had been wrestling with how to access the Hufflepuff Cup Horcrux in the Lestrange vault. Having failed to come up with a solution, he couldn't help but seek Arcturus's advice. Sirius nodded thoughtfully. "Good guess. However, unless we can read the mind of Bellatrix, we have no way of finding the hiding place." Harry pressed on, "I have narrowed down the search to some places, but the most likely place I think would be Gringotts. The most secure bank in Wizarding Britain should have one of them. Just don't know how to confirm or go about searching for the Horcrux in Gringotts. Have any ideas, grandfather?" Arcturus stroked his beard, considering the question. "Goblins don't trust wizards, and vice versa, so I have no way of getting into Bellatrix's or the Lestrange's vault. We will have to wait for her to come out of Azkaban to think of some way, or else wait for the natural death of the Lestranges and her, and then do some tricks to buy the Horcrux from her unsuspecting inheritor." Harry sighed, feeling a mix of frustration and disappointment. "So nothing can be done. It looks like we might have to think of some other ways to kill Voldemort, seeing that destroying all the Horcruxes is not possible. Maybe we could trap him and imprison him until he dies a natural death. I will have to refer to the Black Library. Grandfather, I might need your help." The old man, despite his age, was still very much able to help Harry. With the help of a proper diet and treatment from Cordelia and Emma, the old man could function normally just like Dumbledore despite his age. After some more chit-chat, Sirius left for his home. With Sirius away, Arcturus turned towards Harry, his eyes gleaming with curiosity. "What did you do with the basilisk, Harry? There's no way you left that hissing trove of treasure for Dumbledore to deal with." Harry grinned, impressed by his grandfather's perceptiveness. "You're right, grandfather. After Sirius left Hogwarts, I went to the chamber again to deal with the basilisk. It was a tough fight, but I won in the end. I have the basilisk harvested and stored in a trunk. Can you help me deal with the less important materials?" Arcturus nodded, a glint of pride in his eyes. "Since you killed the snake, you have full rights on how to deal with it by law. However, we will have to handle things discreetly. We're talking about rare magical materials that cost a lot of galleons. The amount of galleons will make even wizards like Dumbledore jealous." Harry considered this for a moment. "I leave it to you, grandfather. You have the contacts. I just want the basilisk skin for some robes and a few things for the animagus ritual. I don't need much money, so maybe sell the meat and the fangs and store the rest." Arcturus smiled approvingly. "Good thinking. Also, using materials from a 1,000-year-old basilisk, you will have a very good chance of awakening a magical animagus. I want to see this in person." Harry's eyes lit up with excitement. "Sure. I will need your help to prepare for the ritual. I can't wait to gain a magical animagus form." They decided to hide these things from Sirius for now. The missing basilisk might create some suspicions and mayhem, and Sirius not knowing what happened to it would ensure he didn't accidentally show some clues. Sirius could be told later after things cooled down. Later, Harry went outside to the castle grounds. He was eager to test out his gains from the previous night. After that refreshing nap on the train, he was wide awake and excited to experiment with his new abilities as a knight. Harry started with a simple test of strength. He approached a large boulder that he'd previously struggled to budge. With a deep breath, he placed his hands on the cool surface and pushed. To his astonishment, the boulder moved with surprising ease. He estimated that his strength had increased at least 5-fold as written in Gryffindor's notes. Next, he tested his speed. Harry sprinted across the grounds, covering distances in times that would make Olympic athletes envious. His reflexes were put to the test when he asked Myra to throw various objects at him. Harry found he could catch or dodge them with an ease that bordered on precognition. To gauge his improved stamina, Harry embarked on a grueling workout routine that would have exhausted him within minutes before. Now, he found he could maintain intense physical activity for extended periods without tiring. His eyesight had also dramatically improved. Harry could now discern details at distances that were previously impossible, and his night vision had become almost cat-like in its acuity. Curious about how his knighthood affected his magic, Harry began casting spells. He immediately noticed that magic flowed more smoothly through his body, and casting even complex spells felt more natural and quicker. His magical reserves seemed to have expanded as well, allowing him to cast more powerful spells without fatigue. Despite these impressive gains, Harry found he couldn't access his seed of life that he had just awoken or manipulate life energy directly. It seemed that advancing to the rank of Great Knight would be necessary before he could harness those abilities in combat. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the castle grounds, Harry resolved to continue his training. He was not satisfied with merely becoming a knight, even reaching the level of Sky Knight didn't seem enough. Harry was determined to push the boundaries of what was possible in this life, his ambition driving him to seek heights of power and ability that few had ever achieved. With the basilisk defeated, his knighthood achieved, and the animagus ritual on the horizon, Harry felt less anxious about the future war. He knew he was on the path to becoming a force to be reckoned with in the wizarding world. The challenges ahead no longer seemed insurmountable, but rather obstacles to be overcome. With renewed determination, Harry made his way back to the castle, ready to face whatever challenges the future might hold, confident in his growing abilities and the support of his family. Chapter 183, The Animagus Ritual. As the holidays progressed, Harry and Arcturus devoted themselves to preparing for the Animagus ritual with unwavering dedication. The study at Black Castle had transformed into a magical workshop, brimming with rare ingredients and ancient tomes. Many of the crucial components came from the basilisk Harry had slain, their potent magic holding the promise of extraordinary results. The process was grueling, requiring Harry to follow specialized diets to attune his body to the magic, spend hours in deep meditation to prepare his mind, and practice complex magical exercises to refine his control. As the day of the ritual drew near, Harry found himself caught between excitement and nervousness. The possibility of becoming a magical animagus, something previously thought impossible, was tantalizing beyond measure. Arcturus, ever observant, noticed Harry's anticipation. "Remember, Harry," he cautioned, his voice gentle but firm, "even with the basilisk parts, success isn't guaranteed. But if anyone can achieve a magical animagus form, it's you." Harry nodded, his determination evident in the set of his jaw. "I understand, grandfather. I'm prepared for whatever outcome, but I can't help hoping for something extraordinary." Their meticulous preparations were interrupted one afternoon by the arrival of Sirius, his face edged with concern. As he entered the study, both Harry and Arcturus looked up, instantly sensing the gravity of his news. "Dumbledore couldn't take on the basilisk," Sirius announced without preamble, his voice tight with frustration. "He went with Charles to the chamber and the statue where Harry said the basilisk nest was, but Dumbledore found that there was a secret phrase to open that place." Harry's heart raced, but he kept his expression carefully neutral. "What happened then?" he asked, striving to keep his voice level. Sirius ran a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. "Dumbledore and Charles tried many variations of phrases in Parseltongue, but they all failed. They're at a loss." "Why didn't they just destroy the entrance?" Harry asked, feigning innocence while his mind raced. Sirius shook his head, his expression grim. "Dumbledore said the place was connected to the Hogwarts wards. If he wanted to destroy the entrance, he'd have to destroy the Hogwarts wards too, which isn't a viable option." "So what now?" Arcturus inquired, his tone measured, revealing nothing of their secret knowledge. "They're in a dilemma," Sirius replied, pacing the room. "Dumbledore asked for my help, and well, I thought I'd ask you, Harry. Any ideas?" Harry shrugged, maintaining his facade of ignorance. "I have no idea. I guess you could ask Evelyn Rosier to see if she remembers something. But my best bet should be to leave it alone. Without the secret phrase, the basilisk should be mostly locked away and school is going to be safe. We just have to beware of Voldemort coming back." Sirius's face fell at the suggestion. "There's no hope from Miss Rosier's side. While treating her for dark possession, the healers had to obliviate some of her memories. Now she remembers almost nothing of what happened in the past year. However, the good news is that she's feeling fine now and there are no long-term side effects of dark possession." Seeing that Harry could provide no further help, Sirius left the castle to relay the news to Dumbledore. The Aurors and Hogwarts professors were now working towards making the school safe for reopening. If the basilisk couldn't be taken care of, their best idea was to put more protections around the nest to ensure no one could reach that place, and even if someone luckily did, they would know and react properly. After Sirius's departure, a heavy silence fell over the study. Harry and Arcturus exchanged meaningful looks, both aware of the delicate situation they were navigating. "Well," Arcturus finally said, a hint of amusement in his voice, "it seems your secret is safe for now, Harry." Harry nodded, relief washing over him. "As long as Dumbledore can't reach the basilisk's nest, my actions should remain hidden. We just need to ensure the basilisk parts are sold discreetly." Arcturus's eyes twinkled with mischief. "Leave that to me, my boy. Now, shall we return to our preparations? This animagus ritual won't perform itself. Dash." As the night of the full moon arrived, the anticipation in Black Castle was palpable. In a secluded clearing within the grounds, Harry and Arcturus had meticulously prepared the ritual circle. Intricate runes glowed faintly in the moonlight, their power humming in the air. At the center of the circle, Harry had placed the most potent parts of the basilisk, its eyes, still gleaming with an otherworldly light even in death, the venom sac, swollen with its lethal contents, and several massive fangs, their wicked points glinting ominously in the pale light. As the moon reached its zenith, Harry stepped into the circle, his heart pounding. Arcturus nodded encouragingly from the edge, his face a mixture of anticipation and concern. Harry took a deep breath, centering himself, and began the incantation they had practiced tirelessly for days. The ancient words flowed from Harry's lips, each syllable resonating with power. As he spoke, the basilisk parts began to glow, their magic awakening. The runes flared to life, pulsing with energy that seemed to resonate with Harry's very being. Suddenly, the world around Harry began to fade. The clearing, Arcturus, even his own body seemed to dissolve into mist. Harry felt a sensation of falling, then of soaring, and then he was flying. Harry found himself suspended in the midst of a raging thunderstorm. Dark clouds roiled around him, lit intermittently by brilliant flashes of lightning. Rain lashed at him, but he felt no discomfort. Instead, he felt exhilarated. He knew, instinctively, that he was a bird, a large one, but he couldn't determine what kind. His movements weren't his own, the bird's instincts guided him through the tempest with ease. Lightning struck nearby, but instead of fear, Harry felt a thrill of excitement. The bird banked and soared, riding the violent updrafts with grace and power. Harry marveled at the sensation, unlike anything he had experienced on a broom. This was true flight, unencumbered and free. As he flew over a vast lake, a particularly bright flash of lightning illuminated the water's surface. In that split second, Harry caught a glimpse of his reflection, the majestic form of a thunderbird. Excitement surged through him. A thunderbird. One of the most powerful magical creatures, with the ability to sense danger and create storms at will. The implications were staggering. The vision continued, the thunderbird Harry soaring through the storm, reveling in its power. Harry lost all sense of time, caught up in the exhilaration of flight and the raw energy of the storm. When Harry finally awoke, he found himself lying in the ritual circle, the basilisk parts now nothing more than ash. Arcturus was kneeling beside him, relief evident on his face. "Welcome back, my boy," Arcturus said softly. "You were out for quite some time. Did you see your form?" Harry nodded, still processing the experience. "A thunderbird, grandfather. I'm a thunderbird." Harry was elated with his animagus form. He had hoped for a flying creature, and he had gained that and so much more. While the large size of a thunderbird might limit its use for stealth, the power and abilities he would likely gain were beyond his wildest dreams. However, he knew he had no way of knowing exactly what kind of powers he would develop. Arcturus's eyes widened in amazement. "Extraordinary," he breathed. "Truly extraordinary. A magical animagus form, and a thunderbird, no less. You continue to surpass all expectations, Harry." As the initial excitement of the revelation settled, Harry knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter in his magical journey. He had unlocked his magical animagus form, but the path to actually transforming into a thunderbird would be long and challenging. In the days that followed, Harry threw himself into research with renewed vigor. He pored over every book he could find about thunderbirds, studying their habits, their powers, and their place in magical lore. He spent hours in meditation, reaching out to his inner animagus, trying to forge a deeper connection with the majestic creature he had glimpsed in his vision. Harry knew the path ahead would be difficult. Transforming into such a powerful magical creature would require not just knowledge and practice, but a deep understanding of the thunderbird's nature and magic. As he closed another tome on magical creatures, Harry smiled to himself. Unlike his ordinary life in the past, this life was going to be legendary, and he was going to make sure of it. The challenges ahead, mastering his thunderbird form, dealing with the lingering threat of Voldemort, navigating the complex political landscape of the wizarding world, all seemed like stepping stones on his path to greatness. Chapter 184, Return to Hogwarts. As the holidays drew to a close, Harry found himself both relaxed and eager to return to Hogwarts. The time spent honing his studies, enjoying family gatherings, and going on outings had flown by, and soon it was time to board the Hogwarts Express once more. In the days leading up to the new term, Dumbledore had made a bold announcement in the Daily Prophet, declaring that the basilisk had been slain and Hogwarts was once again safe for all students. It was a well-intentioned lie to calm the scared parents and make them confident enough to send their children back to school. Dumbledore wasn't worried about the basilisk arising again and the truth being exposed. He was confident that the wards he had placed around the basilisk's lair would ensure that didn't happen. Little did Dumbledore know, he didn't have to worry at all. The basilisk had indeed been slain, and its important parts had helped Harry gain a magical animagus form. The other harvested parts had filled Harry's vault with a substantial number of galleons. The journey on the Hogwarts Express was as lively as ever, filled with excited chatter of students sharing holiday stories and speculating about the upcoming term. As Harry settled into a compartment with his friends, he couldn't help but feel a little sorry that there wouldn't be any excitement at Hogwarts this term. It was going to be boring since he had taken care of the danger. He couldn't wait for this term to pass quickly and for the next year to bring more excitement. He had grown a little attached to the trouble, he admitted to himself. Upon arrival at Hogwarts, the great hall buzzed with energy as students filed in for the welcome feast. This year, the spread seemed even more lavish than usual, perhaps as a gesture to assuage any lingering concerns about the school's safety. As Harry scanned the room, his eyes fell upon Colin Creevey, the enthusiastic first year who had been petrified during the basilisk attacks. Harry was relieved to see him back, surmising that the school must have sourced Mandrake restorative draft from external suppliers to revive the affected boy sooner. His gaze then drifted to the Gryffindor table, where he spotted Evelyn Rosier. She appeared to have returned to her normal self, free from the dark influence that had possessed her. However, Harry noticed that nothing had changed about her situation in the Gryffindor house. Despite the sympathy she should have gained from being dragged to the chamber and then rescued, she had gained no friends. Her housemates were still wary, due to her family's reputation. Harry felt a twinge of sympathy but decided against intervening. Some situations, he mused, needed to resolve themselves naturally. As the feast neared its conclusion, Dumbledore rose to his feet, a familiar twinkle in his eye as he prepared to address the students. The hall fell silent in anticipation of his words. "My dear students," Dumbledore began, his voice carrying easily across the room, "I am delighted to announce that with the return of safety to our hallowed halls, we shall be reinstating the Quidditch Cup." A roar of approval erupted from the students, with Oliver Wood's voice rising above the rest, his dream of securing the cup as captain reignited. Dumbledore allowed the excitement to settle before continuing, "But that is not all. The dueling club, which proved so popular last term, will continue to meet on weekends. For those interested in honing their defensive skills, I encourage you to participate. And to add a touch of excitement, we will be holding a dueling championship near the end of the year." This announcement was met with another round of enthusiastic cheers. Harry, however, was not excited. He, an under-17 dueling champion, participating in this local tournament would reduce the excitement for other students. Also, there would be no fun as no one would be able to give him a good battle. Anyway, he had his first adult-level tournament coming up during the summer, he could have all the exciting duels there. "Professor Lockhart will continue to oversee the dueling club," Dumbledore went on, gesturing towards the flamboyant defense against the dark arts teacher. "However, as Professor Snape has other commitments, he will be assisted by our very own charms master, Professor Flitwick." The mention of Flitwick's involvement drew the loudest cheer yet. Harry grinned, knowing full well the students were excited to learn from an actual master and not a fraud. He caught Flitwick's eye and noticed a mix of resignation and determination in his master's expression. Clearly, Professor Flitwick was not thrilled about working alongside Lockhart. As the applause died down, Lockhart rose to his feet, his trademark smile dazzling as ever. "Thank you, Headmaster," he proclaimed, his voice dripping with false modesty. "I assure you all, under my expert tutelage, you'll be dueling like professionals in no time. Why, had Professor Dumbledore requested my assistance with the basilisk, I dare say the matter would have been resolved even sooner." Harry had to stifle a snort at Lockhart's claim, knowing full well that Lockhart would be the first to run at the sight of danger. Harry let Lockhart have his fun. His days at Hogwarts were numbered. The timer was ticking down. During the holidays, Harry had set in motion the plan to expose Lockhart's true nature. It was a scheme long overdue, delayed only by the more pressing matters of the Chamber of Secrets. Now, with those dangers behind them, Harry was ready to unveil Lockhart's illegal memory charms and his theft of other people's achievements. As the feast concluded and students began to file out of the Great Hall, Harry found himself walking alongside his friends Roger Davies, Reggie Whitlock, and Cedric Diggory. The excitement from Dumbledore's announcements still buzzed in the air. Roger turned to Harry, his eyes alight with curiosity. "So, Harry, are you going to participate in the dueling tournament?" Reggie chimed in, "If you do decide to enter, the rest of us might as well not bother showing up. It'll be hopeless for anyone else to win." Cedric nodded in agreement, adding with a grin, "He's right, you know. You'd probably have us all disarmed before we could even raise our wands." Harry looked at their crestfallen expressions and couldn't help but smile. "Actually, I've decided not to participate this time," he said, watching as surprise replaced their previous expressions. "Really?" Roger asked, clearly surprised by Harry's response. Winning Hogwarts' first dueling tournament was a tempting honor. Harry nodded, "Yes, I have another tournament to prepare for during the summer. It'll require quite a bit of my focus and training time." At this news, all three of his friends visibly brightened, exchanging excited glances. "Well, in that case," Reggie exclaimed, pumping his fist in the air, the rest of us might actually stand a chance. Roger laughed. I wouldn't go that far, Reggie. Some of us still have to contend with Cedric here. Cedric grinned at the compliment before turning back to Harry. Don't get me wrong, mate. We'll miss seeing you in action, but I can't say I'm not a little relieved. Whatever this summer tournament is, I'm sure you'll do brilliantly. Thanks, guys, Harry replied, appreciating their support. I'm looking forward to seeing all of you compete, though. It should be quite the spectacle. Hope the tournament is split by year, otherwise, you guys will have a difficult time defeating the 7th years. They talked about the topic until they reached the point where they had to separate, Cedric heading towards the Hufflepuff common room and Harry and the other two headed towards Ravenclaw Tower. Tomorrow was going to be exciting. Harry hoped the things he had put in place to surprise Lockhart would give him some enjoyment. It would be a good way to start this term and a present for all the students. Chapter 185, The End of a Celebrity. The following morning, the Great Hall buzzed with the usual breakfast chatter as students filled their plates and discussed their upcoming classes. Harry sat at the Ravenclaw table, casually buttering his toast while keeping an eye on the staff table. Professor Lockhart was there, beaming as always, completely oblivious to the storm that was about to break over his carefully coiffed head. As if on cue, the familiar sound of fluttering wings filled the air as owls began to swoop into the hall, delivering the morning mail. Harry watched as several students unrolled their copies of the Daily Prophet, their eyes widening in shock as they took in the front page. Within moments, excited whispers spread through the hall like wildfire. Harry took out his own copy of the Prophet to see how the wizard reporters had crafted this explosive story. Gilderoy Lockhart, a fraud. Best-selling author and Hogwarts professor accused of memory charms and false claims. The article, spanning several pages, detailed a shocking expose. In a stunning turn of events, evidence has come to light revealing that Gilderoy Lockhart, famed author and current Defense Against the Dark Arts professor at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, has built his entire career on lies and magical deception. Anonymous sources have provided the Prophet with irrefutable proof that Lockhart's heroic deeds, as described in his best-selling books, were in fact performed by other witches and wizards. Lockhart allegedly used memory charms to erase the real heroes' recollections of their achievements, then claimed these feats as his own. Among the evidence are sworn statements from the true vanquisher of the Wagga Wagga werewolf and the actual savior of a Transylvanian village from vampire attacks. Both individuals had their memories recently restored by skilled healers from St. Mungo's, revealing the extent of Lockhart's deception. Additionally, magical law enforcement officials have uncovered a trail of obliviated victims across several countries, all corresponding to the locations and times of Lockhart's supposed adventures. The Wizarding Examinations Authority has announced that they will be conducting a thorough review of Lockhart's academic credentials, which are now suspected to be falsified. Hogwarts headmaster Albus Dumbledore was unavailable for immediate comment on Lockhart's position at the school in light of these revelations. As this story develops, many in the wizarding community are left wondering, if Lockhart's heroic deeds were all fabricated, what else might he be lying about? The article continued with more details, including interviews with some of Lockhart's former classmates who expressed skepticism about his abilities, and statements from publishing industry insiders hinting at doubts they'd had about the veracity of his stories. Harry couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction. The evidence had been surprisingly easy to find. All he had to do was search for excellent wizards and adventurers who had suddenly lost their memories. Then, he arranged for them to be taken to St. Mungo's for treatment. None of these wizards had been treated until now because they couldn't afford it. Reversing memory charms needed skilled legilimens who were rare, hence the high cost of treatment. Harry had paid for these treatments and sent the recovered victims to Sirius to take their testimonies and press charges against Lockhart. The Daily Prophet had also done its own investigation, it seemed, since they had uncovered more of Lockhart's victims and gathered additional testimonies. It looked like Lockhart would be spending the rest of his life in Azkaban. Some might wonder why, if it was so easy to find proof of Lockhart's fraud, nothing had happened to him yet. Well, this was because Lockhart had been careful in choosing his victims. He targeted wizards who were poor and didn't have a pure-blood family's backing. This way, people weren't bothered to look into it. On top of this, Lockhart must have spent a lot of galleons bribing ministry officials to not investigate the unauthorized obliviation cases. However, now with Harry involved, and through him, Sirius and Arcturus, everything was out in the open. As the news spread through the Great Hall, all eyes turned to the staff table. Lockhart, who had been cheerfully buttering a crumpet, seemed to finally notice the commotion. His ever-present smile faltered as he caught sight of the newspaper headlines being thrust in his direction by shocked students. Lockhart tried to make a run for it, but someone was ready for him. Snape, with a smile that shocked many students, stood in the path of Lockhart's escape and had him quickly disarmed and tied up. Many students were dumbstruck at Snape's expression. For the first time ever, they saw a genuine smile on Snape's face. Within minutes, orders were at the school to take Lockhart away. Harry had already informed Amelia Bones about his plan, and she had her orders ready to put Lockhart behind bars and send him for trial after a proper investigation. She hoped to uncover some corrupt ministry officials through him. With Lockhart gone, the people who were most happy were surprisingly the professors. For the rest of the day, the professors were in a good mood and awarded many house points for the littlest of things. Professor Flitwick looked the happiest. He no longer had to deal with Lockhart for dueling club activities. The only people sad were Lockhart's die-hard fans who couldn't be consoled. They were crying, angry that their trust had been betrayed. Other than them, all students were happy. They had hated Lockhart's Dada classes and that cringe-worthy smile. Now all they hoped was that a replacement Dada professor would come soon and teach them some actual defense against the dark arts. The excitement of Lockhart's arrest died down in a few days, with everyone returning to their usual routines. Lockhart had his trial and, as expected, was locked in Azkaban. His books were removed from shelves and later republished by the real heroes. The publishers were quick to reach out to them as the books still had a high demand among witches. A temporary Dada professor came to Hogwarts and took over the class, another retired Auror. Decent at teaching but not great. However, this was enough for students since they had faced far worse. The rest of the Hogwarts term passed by quickly. No exciting incidents occurred. Harry was busy with classes, his training under Flitwick, his apprenticeship duties, which also included helping Professor Flitwick with the dueling club, and his extra studies. This already busy schedule kept him occupied for the whole term, and he hardly noticed the days flying by. As for the results of various tournaments at Hogwarts, in Quidditch, 2 teams tied for the top with 2 wins and 1 loss each, Slytherin and Hufflepuff. In the end, due to the high score difference Slytherin had gained during their first match against Gryffindor, Slytherin won the cup. The dueling tournament was divided into under 13, under 15, and 17 and under categories. The under 13 was won by Charles Potter. His training at home before coming to Hogwarts played a huge role, as he outclassed the rest of the participants in his age group. Cedric won the under 15 tournament. Harry's friends had had some training sessions with him in the past and more this year. Cedric had performed the best during those sessions, and the same was shown during the tournament. Roger was the runner-up. The tournament for 17-year-olds and under was won by the head boy of this year. As for the House Cup, it was won by Ravenclaw, thanks to the 200 points Harry had gained for his part in saving Evelyn Rosier from the chamber. This ensured that Ravenclaw was way ahead in the points table. As the term came to a close, Harry found himself looking forward to the summer. The upcoming adult-level dueling tournament, the All-English Dueling Tournament, loomed on the horizon, promising to test his skills in ways Hogwarts never could. While packing his trunk, Harry thought about everything that had happened this year. He'd made a lot of big changes compared to the canon timeline. He'd exposed Lockhart as a fraud, dealt with the Chamber of Secrets early, and become much stronger. Harry was really happy with how things had turned out. He knew that all these changes might cause unexpected things to happen in the future. It was like throwing a stone in a pond, the ripples could go in any direction. But Harry wasn't worried about this. He felt he was now powerful enough to handle whatever came his way. As Harry closed his trunk, he smiled to himself. He didn't know exactly what the future would bring, there might be new problems or new chances to do good things. But whatever happened, he was ready to face it. He was looking forward to seeing how his actions would change the magical world in the years to come. Chapter 186, The All-English Dueling Tournament. The summer holidays had begun, bringing with them a sense of freedom and excitement. A few days into the break, Harry found himself at Bones Manor, engaged in what had become one of his favorite activities, playing with Sirius's son, Aries Black. The toddler, just over 2 years old, sat wide-eyed on the plush carpet of the living room, captivated by Harry's animated storytelling. With graceful wand movements, Harry conjured vibrant illusions to accompany his tales. Magical creatures danced around them, eliciting delighted giggles from little Aries. And then, Harry proclaimed dramatically, the brave pirate vanquished the fearsome monster king, freeing the villagers from his tyrannical rule. With a flick of his wand, he transformed a nearby cushion into a comical, yet slightly intimidating figure. Aries clapped his hands in glee, completely engrossed in the story. Amelia Bones, watching from the doorway, couldn't help but smile at the scene. "It's remarkable," she said, addressing Harry. "Aries is only ever this well behaved when you're around. With anyone else, he's a little whirlwind of energy." Harry grinned, ruffling Aries' hair affectionately. "Of course he is," he replied with a wink. "That's because I'm his favorite big brother, aren't I, Aries?" Aries nodded excitedly. "Harry is the bestest." Just then, Sirius entered the room, his face a comical mask of exaggerated monster features, the result of Harry's earlier spell work to entertain Aries. "Harry," he said, his voice muffled by his transformed mouth, "we need to leave. We'll be late for the tournament." He paused, touching his distorted face gingerly. "And could you please change my face back to normal? I don't know what you're learning with Professor Flitwick for your charm's mastery, this charm seems impossible to remove." Harry, deciding he'd had enough fun at his godfather's expense, waved his wand lazily. Sirius's features smoothly morphed back to their usual handsome arrangement. "There you go, old man," Harry teased. "Can't have you scaring the competition away before we even start." After a round of goodbyes, they set off. Their destination, the All-English Dueling Tournament. Unlike the previous summer's competition, this event was closer to home, set in the outskirts of London in a makeshift arena. Harry and Sirius apparat to the location, materializing in a designated arrival area. As they oriented themselves, Harry spotted a familiar diminutive figure waiting for them, Professor Flitwick, his face beaming with excitement. "Ah, there you are, Harry, Sirius," Flitwick called out, waving them over. "I was beginning to wonder if you'd misunderstood the date or time." As they approached, Harry took in the venue. From the outside, it appeared to be nothing more than a huge circus-style tent, its striped fabric billowing slightly in the breeze. But as they stepped through the entrance, Harry's eyes widened in appreciation. The interior was a stark contrast to the modest exterior. It was as if they had stepped into a grand magical coliseum. Tiered seating surrounded a central arena, which was currently shimmering with protective enchantments. Banners representing various magical institutions and notable wizarding families hung from the rafters, their colors vibrant against the backdrop of the tent's fabric. "It's even more impressive than the Under-17 European tournament," Harry murmured, taking in the sights. Flitwick nodded enthusiastically. "Indeed it is, Harry. The All-English tournament may be more localized, but it's steeped in tradition. Some of the greatest duels in British wizarding history have taken place in this very arena, or rather, under this very tent, as it's reconstructed each year." As they made their way through the growing crowd, Harry could feel the excitement building. Wizards and witches of all ages milled about, some conversing with their family members who were there to watch them duel, others engaged in animated discussions about dueling techniques and past tournaments. For this tournament, Harry hadn't invited anyone, it was just him, Sirius, and his master Flitwick. "Now, Harry," Sirius said, placing a hand on his godson's shoulder, "remember what we discussed. This tournament is different from the junior leagues. You'll be facing fully qualified adult wizards, some with decades of experience. Don't let your guard down for a moment." Harry nodded solemnly. "I understand, Sirius. I'm ready to win this." Sirius continued, his tone serious, "I hope you are. There aren't many rules in this tournament. As long as you don't kill your opponent, any spells are allowed. So be careful out there. I don't want you to be missing any body parts." Harry replied calmly, "Relax, Sirius. We've been over this many times already. No need to worry. You know me. I care more about my safety than anything else. I wouldn't be participating in this tournament if I didn't have confidence in my ability to avoid getting hurt. I promise I'll admit defeat as soon as I see I'm not in control of a duel." Sirius, although not completely satisfied with the promise, chose to believe in his godson. As they approached the registration desk, the official's eyes lit up with recognition. "Master Flitwick. It's good to see you here after so many years. Are you here to help your apprentice register? Although I didn't hear about you taking on an apprentice. Is this young man your new apprentice?" the man asked, gesturing to Sirius. Flitwick chuckled, shaking his head. No. This is Hadrian Potter, my apprentice," he said, indicating Harry. The official's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "How old is he?" He looks barely 18 or so. Flitwick smiled proudly. Harry is 15 years old and last year's European Under-17 tournament champion. The official's jaw dropped slightly. 15? That's unusual. He shuffled through some papers, then looked up with a concerned expression. All the documents are in order, but Master Flitwick, are you sure you want your apprentice, who's so young, to participate? The tournament has had some accidental deaths in the past. It might be better for him to practice a few more years. Flitwick stood tall, his voice firm. I am confident in my apprentice's strength and abilities. The official nodded, turning to Harry with newfound respect. Well then, Mr. Potter, I look forward to seeing your duels. I hope you surprise me. After completing the registration, the trio moved towards the participants' area. Both Sirius and Flitwick followed Harry, as Flitwick had used his contacts to allow Sirius to accompany Harry in the participants' area. As they entered, Harry could feel the eyes of the other duelists on him. It looked like word had already spread in the arena about his participation. He was attracting a lot of attention. Whispers followed in their wake, some curious, others dismissive. He caught snippets of conversation. Is that a child? What's Master Flitwick thinking, bringing someone so young? I heard he is from the Potter family. He might be good. But even if he is a Potter, it is too early for him to compete here. Harry kept his face neutral, but inside, he was smiling. Let them underestimate him. It would only make his victories sweeter. They found a quiet corner where Harry could prepare. As he began his warm-up exercises, Flitwick turned to him with a serious expression. Remember, Harry, this isn't just about winning. It's about learning and growing. Every duel is an opportunity to improve. Observe your opponents carefully, adapt to their styles, and most importantly, stay safe. Harry nodded, his focus sharpening. I understand, Professor. I won't let you down. As the announcement for the first round of duels echoed through the arena, Harry readied himself. This was it. The moment he'd been training for since he had heard about his great-grandfather's feats in the dueling circuit all those years ago from Lord Black. It was time for the name Potter to ring in the dueling arena once more. Chapter 187, Duels and Disruptions. The arena crackled with tension as the announcer's voice reverberated through magical speakers. For our next duel, we have Hadrian Potter versus Jack Harris. A wave of gasps rippled through the audience as Harry stepped onto the dueling platform. The announcer, sensing the crowd's shock, quickly added, while Mr. Potter may be only 15 years old, he is far from inexperienced. He is last year's Under-17 European champion. This revelation ignited a flurry of excited murmurs and concerned whispers among the spectators. Harry's opponent, Jack Harris, a burly wizard in his early 30s, swaggered onto the platform with a smirk. Oi, little boy, he called out, his voice dripping with condescension. Why don't you run along home to your mummy, kid? This isn't a place for children playing at being wizards. Harry's eyes flashed dangerously. Funny, I was about to suggest you retire too. It would be a shame to embarrass yourself in front of all these people. Harris's face contorted with anger. You insolent little brat. I'll teach you to respect your betters. The referee, a stern-looking witch, intervened. Gentlemen, take your positions. On my mark, begin. Harris, still smirking, lowered his wand. Go on then, Potter. I'll give you a free shot. Try to make it sting at least. Harry didn't hesitate. In a blur of motion, his wand whipped through the air, unleashing a barrage of spells in rapid succession. Stunners, disarming charms, and leg lockers flew from his wand in a dazzling display of magical prowess. He chose these simple spells not for their mercy, but for their speed, knowing they would end the duel instantly against an unprepared opponent. Harris's eyes widened in shock. He had been lazily twirling his wand, not expecting such a ferocious assault. By the time he tried to raise a shield, it was too late. The spells hit him in quick succession, lifting him off his feet and slamming him back onto the platform. He lay there, groaning in pain, his wand rolling away from his limp hand. The referee raised her wand, ending the match. Winner, Hadrian Potter. The audience erupted in a mix of cheers and astonished exclamations. They may have been disappointed by the quick end of the duel, but Harry's rapid casting skill was undeniable and showed he was not to be taken lightly. As Harry made his way back to the participants' area, he could feel the shift in the atmosphere. The other competitors were no longer looking at him with dismissive amusement. Their gazes now held wariness, even though they still didn't consider him a serious contender for the championship. Harry didn't have long to enjoy his win, as the next round of fights was announced soon after. His next opponent was Duncan McNair. Harry learned from Sirius that Duncan was the younger brother of Walden McNair, a known dark wizard and suspected Death Eater. Harry remembered Walden McNair from the books as someone who was supposed to kill Buckbeak on directions from Malfoy. McNair would also become a Death Eater of Voldemort's inner circle later. With this information, Harry knew he was up against a dark wizard in the next round. Even though he was sure he could win, he needed to be careful not to fall for any tricks or get hit by a dark spell. The announcer's voice boomed once more. Our next duel promises to be a clash of titans. We have Hadrian Potter, the prodigy looking to prove that youth is no barrier to excellence, against Duncan McNair, a seasoned duelist renowned for his merciless style. Prepare yourselves for a spectacle. As they took their positions, McNair's eyes glittered with malevolent anticipation. Well, well, little Potter, he sneered, his voice laced with venom. I'm going to savor every moment of this. My associates will relish the memory of me breaking you. I do hope you don't crumble too quickly. Where's the fun in that? Harry readied his wand nonchalantly. Funny, I was thinking the same about you. I wasn't sure whether to deal you a lot of pain or go easy, but your words have cleared my suspicions. Don't worry, I'll try to make it memorable for your associates. I hope your friends don't disown you when they learn you lost to a Potter. McNair's face twisted with rage. A smooth talker, eh? I love making your kind cry with fear. I will enjoy carving that smirk off your little face. The referee, sensing the escalating tension, swiftly commenced the duel. McNair wasted no time, launching a barrage of dark curses that lit up the arena with sickly colors. Harry dodged and weaved, conjuring concrete blocks to absorb the more dangerous spells. The audience gasped as the blocks exploded into dust under the impact of McNair's curses. Harry, however, felt no danger. Although the spells were dangerous, they had no hope of hitting him. Not content with just dodging, he retaliated with his own onslaught. Cutting hexes whistled through the air, followed by bone-shattering curses and concussive blasts of magical energy. Each spell was carefully chosen, designed to not just harm but to systematically dismantle McNair's defenses. McNair's eyes widened as a particularly vicious cutting curse sliced through his thigh. Despite his best efforts to dodge, the spell left a deep gash. His shield charm flickered, barely withstanding Harry's relentless assault. You'll pay for that with blood, Potter, McNair snarled, his voice ragged with pain and fury. You've successfully angered me. Harry, never breaking his rhythm, retorted coolly, oh, was that enough to anger you? I thought you were just warming up. Truth be told, I'm disappointed by the skill shown so far. Come on, McNair, make me work for it at least. The taunt had its intended effect. McNair's rage fueled his magic, and the duel escalated into a deadly ballet. Both wizards were using dangerous spells, and the audience watched in stunned silence, aware that one misstep could result in severe injury. As the fight wore on, Harry noticed McNair's movements becoming labored, his breathing ragged. The earlier wound was taking its toll, causing a slight but noticeable limp. It was time to end this. With a series of complex wand movements, Harry launched his final assault. He feinted left, then spun right, his spells weaving a web of light that shattered McNair's shields and left him disoriented. Before his opponent could recover, Harry unleashed a pair of precisely aimed blasting curses. The curses struck McNair's wand arm with devastating effect. The result was as decisive as it was gruesome. McNair would need extensive magical healing to regain the use of his arm. The referee's whistle cut through the stunned silence. Winner, Hadrian Potter. As the crowd erupted into cheers, Harry left the platform without a backward glance at his fallen opponent. Gloating wasn't his style. He caught Sirius's eye in the crowd, his godfather's face a mix of pride and concern. Harry gave him a reassuring nod. As Harry prepared for his third and final duel of the day, an unexpected interruption occurred. A silvery dog patroness materialized next to Sirius, delivering an urgent message. He was needed back at the Auror office immediately. Sirius approached Harry, his expression grave. I'm sorry, Harry, but I've got to go. Duty calls. He squeezed Harry's shoulder reassuringly. You've been brilliant today. I'm proud of you. Stay safe, and I hope you return with the trophy. Phileas, I leave Harry's safety in your hands. Flitwick nodded. Don't worry, Sirius. I'll look after Harry, not that he needs it. You should hurry. It looks serious if you are being called back like this. Sirius ran out, joined by other Aurors who had been participating or watching the tournament. The atmosphere in the arena shifted palpably. Whispers and murmurs rippled through the crowd, an undercurrent of tension building. Harry had an inkling about what might have transpired, but the reaction seemed disproportionate to his suspicions. Minutes after Sirius's departure, an official stepped onto the main platform. Attention, all participants and spectators. Due to unforeseen circumstances, the remainder of today's tournament has been suspended. Further information will be provided as soon as possible. We apologize for any inconvenience and ask that you please exit the arena in an orderly fashion. A collective groan of disappointment rose from the crowd, quickly replaced by speculative chatter. Harry felt a mix of frustration and curiosity. He'd been ready to win this tournament and take on the world next, and now that opportunity had been snatched away. As Harry and Professor Flitwick made their way to the exit, Harry's sharp ears picked up fragments of conversation from the departing crowd. The words Azkaban and Breakout were repeated frequently, confirming his suspicions. Harry thought about what he knew from the books. He remembered that Sirius had escaped from Azkaban around this time in the original story. It looked like a breakout had happened in this world too. At first, Harry thought Peter Pettigrew might have escaped, but he quickly realized that didn't make sense. Pettigrew escaping alone wouldn't cause such a big reaction. As they walked out into the late afternoon sun, Harry kept thinking about what could have happened. He knew Pettigrew wasn't good enough at magic to escape from Azkaban Island by himself. The way the Aurors were reacting made it seem like something bigger and more worrying had happened. Maybe Pettigrew had escaped with other prisoners, which would explain why everyone was so alarmed. Harry knew he'd have to wait for news from Sirius or Amelia to find out what really happened. But he was sure of one thing: next year at Hogwarts wouldn't be quiet. He reminded himself to practice his Patronus charm more, expecting to see some ghostly creatures at school. Chapter 188, The Great Azkaban Escape. On a small, desolate island between Azkaban and the mainland, 4 figures huddled in the shadow of a rocky outcrop. Their faces were gaunt, their eyes wild with a mix of exhaustion and newfound freedom. These were no ordinary escapees, they were some of the most dangerous Death Eaters to have ever been imprisoned in Azkaban. Peter Pettigrew, looking more rat-like than ever, kept his distance from the others, his eyes darting nervously between them. The Lestranges, Rodolphus, Bellatrix, and Robustan, glared at him with a mixture of disgust and reluctant gratitude. The tension in the air was palpable, thick with unspoken accusations and lingering resentment. Rodolphus broke the tense silence, his voice hoarse from disuse. "I still can't believe we're out, and that it's thanks to this sniveling traitor." Bellatrix's eyes flashed dangerously, her wild hair whipping in the sea breeze. "Don't think this makes us friends, Wormtail. You're the reason our lord fell." Her hand twitched, as if longing for a wand to curse him with. Pettigrew flinched, his voice trembling. I got you out. That has to count for something." He wrung his hands nervously, his beady eyes never resting on one spot for long. Robustan snorted, a harsh sound in the quiet air. "It just means we won't kill you right now. The Dark Lord can decide your fate when he returns." The implied threat hung heavy between them. "Speaking of which," Rodolphus interjected, his brow furrowed, "I didn't think a coward like you would be brave enough to save us, knowing we might have taken revenge on you for leading our lord into a trap." Pettigrew's voice rose an octave higher. "I didn't know it was a trap." Lady Potter kept everything quiet. Even James and Dumbledore didn't know she was going to use that sacrificial ritual. His words tumbled out quickly, a desperate attempt at justification. Robastan's lip curled in disgust. "Don't make excuses. It was your job as the spy to know everything." Bellatrix, her eyes never leaving Pettigrew, spoke up. "Who's going to keep an eye on this rat? We don't want him to escape before our lord returns. The rat knows how to hide." Her fingers twitched again, as if imagining wrapping them around Pettigrew's neck. Pettigrew's voice took on a pleading tone. "I won't run. I helped you all escape from Azkaban, remember? We are the staunch followers of our lord." Rodolphus narrowed his eyes, suspicion clear in his gaze. "I still find it hard to believe you helped us break out of Azkaban. I didn't think we were close. There must be something I'm missing. Is helping us escape useful for you?" Pettigrew swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing visibly. "I didn't have any other reason. Since I was able to escape, I thought I would help you guys, our Lord's most trusted followers, to escape with me. Believe me. But Pettigrew was lying, and the nervousness in his eyes betrayed him. He really did have a reason for breaking out of the prison with the Lestranges, a reason that went beyond mere loyalty or self-preservation. It all began about half a year ago when a fool named Lockhart was brought to Azkaban. Upon seeing the Dementors and experiencing their happiness-draining effects, Lockhart became terrified and mentally unhinged, attempting to escape. Although the Aurors eventually subdued him, Lockhart unintentionally knocked down a ward stone near Pettigrew's cell during the commotion. This particular stone controlled the wards, preventing Pettigrew from transforming into his rat animagus form. The Aurors on duty that day were new and unaware of the stone's significance, so the wards remained unfixed. Pettigrew noticed the change a day later when he unconsciously transformed into a rat in his sleep. Overjoyed at this discovery, he yearned to escape immediately but lacked the strength to do so. Instead, he used his rat form to hide from the Dementor's effects and gradually regain his energy. After a month of recuperation, he felt strong enough to attempt an escape. In his rat animagus form, Pettigrew easily evaded detection by guards and Dementors, making his way out of the prison building. However, he soon encountered a major obstacle. The island was surrounded by treacherous seas with choppy waves, making swimming impossible. Moreover, anti-apparition wards prevented magical transportation off the island. Undeterred, Pettigrew explored other potential escape routes. He attempted to hide in the boats used by guards and Aurors to travel between the island and mainland. However, he discovered that the boat dock was protected by wards specifically designed to detect animagi, a precaution against outside help for escaping prisoners. Realizing he couldn't escape alone, Pettigrew reluctantly turned to his fellow inmates for assistance. After careful consideration, he decided to approach the Lestranges. They were the only prisoners he somewhat trusted, and he believed they were less likely to betray him to the guards, which would have crushed his dreams of freedom. Pettigrew began meticulously planning their escape. Since the Lestranges couldn't leave the prison building as he could, he searched for alternative exit routes that would allow them to evade both Dementors and guards. His efforts paid off when he discovered the prison sewer system, which had pipes large enough for people to crawl through. Using his rat-like ability to dig, a skill honed by his animagus form, Pettigrew started excavating a tunnel from the sewers to the Lestranges' cell. This talent proved invaluable, as rats are renowned for their capacity to burrow paths to food sources. The work was grueling, and more than once Pettigrew feared discovery, but his desperation drove him on. While working on the tunnel, Pettigrew also focused on helping the Lestranges regain their strength. He began pilfering extra food from the prison pantry and secretly delivering it to them, slowly building up their energy for the escape attempt. When all preparations were complete, they executed their plan during a period of relaxed guard patrol. Pettigrew's careful observations of guard rotations over the past months proved crucial to their timing. He surprised himself with his newfound strategic thinking, having never considered himself particularly clever before. The escape after coming of the sewers culminated in overpowering and silencing 2 guards at the docks, allowing them to acquire 2 wands. The struggle was brief but intense, and for a moment, Pettigrew feared they would fail at the last hurdle. They then commandeered a boat moored nearby. Using the stolen wands, they managed to navigate through the turbulent waters, despite considerable difficulty, and successfully completed their escape. The journey was harrowing, with waves threatening to capsize their small vessel at any moment. Now, the group rested on this small island, recuperating and strategizing their next moves. The adrenaline of their escape was wearing off, replaced by the grim reality of their situation. Rodolphus sensed Pettigrew was hiding something, but decided to let it go for now, acknowledging the debt they owed the rat for their freedom. His eyes, however, remained fixed on Pettigrew, watching for any sign of betrayal. "What now?" Robistan asked, looking to his older brother. His voice held a mix of excitement and uncertainty. Rodolphus straightened up, taking charge. "We recover our strength. Find new wands. These 2 won't do for serious fights. Then we start gathering information." Bellatrix's eyes gleamed with fanatical devotion. "And we find a way to restore our lord. And maybe complete our unfinished mission. Let's get rid of the Potter and Longbottom brats for our lord." Her voice rose with excitement at the prospect of violence. Rodolphus frowned, a voice of caution. "But they're at Hogwarts under that old fool's protection. How can we get to them under these conditions?" Pettigrew, sensing an opportunity to prove his worth, spoke up. "I can help. I know many secret ways into Hogwarts. Dumbledore will never find us." His voice quivered with a mix of fear and eagerness. Rabaston's expression changed, a hint of respect creeping in. I'm starting to like you, rat. Looks like you're not as useless and dumb as I thought. As night deepened, the escaped Death Eaters began to plan their next move. The wizarding world, blissfully unaware, was about to face a threat it thought long buried in the depths of Azkaban. And at the heart of it all, Peter Pettigrew played a dangerous game, knowing that his survival depended on his usefulness to these dangerous allies. As he looked at the faces of his companions, illuminated by the rising moon, he wondered if he had made the right choice. Freedom had come at a price, and he feared the cost might be higher than he was prepared to pay. Chapter 189, Echoes of Breakout. The sun was setting over Black Castle, casting long shadows across the manicured grounds. Inside the study, Harry sat with Sirius and Arcturus, the evening edition of the Daily Prophet spread out between them. The headline screamed in bold letters, "Mass Breakout from Azkaban, Notorious Death Eaters at Large." Harry's eyes skimmed the article, absorbing the details of the escape. He had returned from the All-English dueling tournament feeling frustrated by its abrupt end, but now he understood the necessity. With such dangerous Death Eaters on the loose, Britain needed its best orators on high alert, not occupied with a dueling tournament. As the gravity of the situation settled over the room, Arcturus leaned forward, his brow furrowed. How did this breakout even occur? Azkaban is supposed to be impenetrable. Has an investigation been conducted? It shouldn't have been easy to escape from such a fortress. Sirius sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair once more. We've looked into it. It seems the ward preventing Pettigrew from transforming into his animagus form had somehow stopped working. This allowed him to regain some strength and plan the escape. Our investigation revealed that this might have happened during a small disturbance Lockhart caused when he was first imprisoned. The guards, it appears, didn't thoroughly check for any damage after the incident. Harry listened to this revelation with surprise, his mind racing. It dawned on him that the changes he had set in motion were starting to ripple outward, altering the timeline in unexpected ways. His actions had led to Lockhart's arrest and imprisonment, indirectly creating the conditions for Pettigrew's escape with the Lestranges. The butterfly effect he had read so much about was finally manifesting. Or maybe he was thinking too much and this was not the butterfly effect. This might have happened in spite of Harry's changes since the timeline required someone to escape Azkaban this year to lead to Dementors being stationed at Hogwarts. Despite the unforeseen consequences, Harry did not worry. His strength and knowledge assured him that he could handle whatever challenges these changes might bring. He remained calm. Sirius ran a hand through his hair, a habit Harry recognized as a sign of stress. This is bad, Harry. Really bad. The Lestranges, they're some of the worst of the lot. And Wormtail. His voice trailed off, a mixture of anger and regret coloring his words. I know, Sirius, Harry replied, his face a mask of calm that belied the calculations running through his mind. But it's not all doom and gloom. These four can't command the Death Eaters like Voldemort did. They can be defeated. Arcturus nodded sagely. Harry's right, Sirius. The dark faction won't rally behind these four, nor will the creatures that followed Voldemort. They're alone, dangerous as they may be. True, Sirius conceded. But if they try to resurrect their master, that's the real threat, Harry finished. We need to prevent that at all costs. He paused, a glint in his eye. But there might be an opportunity here, too. Sirius raised an eyebrow. Opportunity? What are you talking about? Bellatrix, Harry said, leaning forward. If we can capture her, we might be able to get to the Horcrux I suspect is in her possession. Whether it's in her Gringotts vault or hidden elsewhere, capturing her could lead us to it. Sirius's eyes widened with realization. Merlin's beard, you're right. But how do we find them? The Auror department is at a loss. Harry's mind raced, considering the possibilities. If I were in their position, my first priority would be regaining strength and acquiring wands. Without them, they're vulnerable. We should keep watch on wand makers, they'll need to visit one soon. Brilliant deduction, Harry. Sirius exclaimed. I'll inform Amelia immediately. We'll set up surveillance on every wand maker in Britain if we have to. Harry then turned towards Arcturus. Grandfather, is there any special black family magic that could help us track Bellatrix? She's still a black by blood, after all. Arcturus shook his head, his expression grave. I'm afraid not, my boy. The blacks have many secrets, but a way to track family members isn't one of them. Bellatrix will be as difficult to find as any other fugitive. Harry's shoulders slumped slightly, but he quickly rallied. Well, it was worth asking. For now, maybe we can ask Creaker to keep an eye on Malfoy Manor. If Bellatrix shows up there, we'll know. Sirius nodded approvingly. Another excellent idea. Creaker had a decent relationship with Narcissa. Even if he's spotted, they might not suspect anything. We'll just have to instruct Creaker to act as he did in my mother's time, all vitriol and pure blood mania. Also, with the Malfoys no longer having Dobby, they might never find a house elf hiding near them. Good, Harry said, feeling a small sense of accomplishment. That's all we can do for now. I'm out of ideas. Arcturus leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. How is Fudge dealing with this situation? Sirius snorted, his disdain for the minister evident. He's really confident that the four got out to go after Charles for defeating their lord. While there's some logic to it, Charles doesn't need our protection due to the security measures the Potters have in place at their home. It's only when he returns to Hogwarts for his third year that he'll need extra protection. Harry's eyes gleamed with determination. If they do go to Hogwarts, you can be sure I'll be there to capture them, Padfoot. I know you will, Harry, Sirius said, a mix of pride and concern in his voice. Just be careful. I know you're powerful, but these are dangerous criminals we're talking about. As their conversation concluded, Sirius left the castle in a hurry, eager to share Harry's insights with Amelia. His determination to recapture the escapees was palpable, driven by the fear of what havoc they might wreak if left unchecked. With nothing more to contribute to the manhunt, Harry returned to his animagus training. For months, he had been working on it, meditating, reliving the vision from the animagus ritual soaring through the sky as a majestic thunderbird. The process was painstakingly slow, often frustrating, but Harry persevered, knowing the ultimate reward would be worth it. His progress was measured by how much control he could exert over his thunderbird form in the dream state. Currently, he could steer himself, flying wherever he wished. But Harry sensed there was more to achieve. To truly become one with his animagus form and transform in reality, he believed he needed to master control over the weather, to create and navigate through thunderstorms at will. As the summer wore on, Harry divided his time between his animagus attempts, physical training, and magical study. The wizarding world remained on high alert, with the Daily Prophet carrying near-daily updates on the fruitless search for the escaped prisoners. The Ministry seemed to be floundering, unsure how to deal with such an unprecedented crisis. The heightened state of emergency affected Harry's holidays as well. With Sirius and Amelia consumed by the manhunt, he found himself responsible for watching over Susan and Aries. While the elves were always present, Amelia insisted on Harry's supervision as an extra precaution. The planned abroad vacation was shelved, replaced by quiet days at Black Castle, filled with study sessions and moments of levity with Susan and Aries. Chapter 190, A New Broom. As the summer days dwindled, Harry found himself back in Diagon Alley for some last-minute school shopping. Most of his supplies had already been procured by Myra, but there were a few owl-specific items he needed to purchase himself. Though he could have easily delegated this task, Harry felt an inexplicable urge to venture out, to immerse himself in the bustling wizarding world once more before returning to Hogwarts. The alley was teeming with activity, more crowded than Harry had ever seen it. Anxious parents herded their children from shop to shop, their voices a constant murmur beneath the general din. What stood out most, however, was the increased aura presence. Sharp-eyed witches and wizards in crimson robes patrolled the streets, their wands at the ready. Harry noted with interest that Ollivander's shop seemed to have the heaviest guard, a clear deterrent against any escaped convicts seeking new wands. As he finished his shopping and prepared to leave, a commotion near Quality Quidditch Supplies caught his attention. A sizable crowd had gathered around the display window, their excited chatter rising above the general noise of the alley. Curiosity piqued, Harry made his way over, easily slipping through the throng of people. There, gleaming in the window, was the newly launched Firebolt. Harry's eyes widened, a familiar surge of excitement coursing through him. He had deliberately held off on upgrading his broom in anticipation of this very moment, and now, seeing the sleek lines and perfectly balanced design of the Firebolt, he knew his wait had been worthwhile. The Firebolt was, to a wizard, what a supercar is to a non-magical person, a vehicle that travels at the fastest speeds and is also an eye-turner. Harry could not wait to try to fly on it. Without hesitation, Harry entered the shop. The owner approached him, a knowing smile playing on his lips. "Ah, young Mr. Potter. Come to admire the Firebolt," Have you? It's a beauty, isn't it? Harry nodded, a rare childlike enthusiasm bubbling up inside him. It's more than a beauty, sir. It's a masterpiece of magical engineering. The owner's eyes lit up, clearly pleased by Harry's appreciation. That it is, lad. Acceleration of 0 to 150 miles per hour in 10 seconds, unbreakable braking charm, perfect balance, it's in a league of its own. Harry's hand reached into his pocket, feeling the weight of his money pouch. I'll take it, he said, his voice firm with decision. The shop owner's eyebrows shot up in surprise. Are you certain? It's quite the investment for a young wizard. Harry smiled, thinking of the basilisk parts he'd sold and the substantial increase in his personal vault. I'm certain. I've been saving for this moment for a long time. As the owner carefully packaged the firebolt, Harry could barely contain his excitement. He left the shop under the envious gazes of onlookers, cradling his prize as he made his way back to the leaky cauldron's flow connection. Back at Black Castle, Harry wasted no time in taking the firebolt for its maiden flight. As he soared into the sky, the broom responded to his slightest touch, as if it were an extension of his own body. The acceleration was breathtaking, the control precise beyond anything he had experienced before. Harry whooped with joy as he put the broom through its paces, performing dives, loops, and spirals that would have been impossible on his old broom. The wind whipped through his hair, and for a moment, all thoughts of Horcruxes, Death Eaters, and his grand plans faded away. Here, high above the ground, he was just a boy enjoying the pure freedom of flight. Sirius, who had arrived at the castle unbeknownst to Harry, watched from below, unable to suppress a grin at his godson's evident delight. It was rare to see Harry so carefree, and Sirius treasured the moment. As Harry finally touched down, his cheeks flushed with exertion and excitement, Sirius approached him. Having fun, pup? Harry's grin was answer enough. It's incredible, Sirius. I've never felt anything like it. Sirius ruffled Harry's wind-tousled hair affectionately. It's good to see you enjoying yourself. For once, you're acting like a child your age. Harry's eyes sparkled with mischief. You'll be acting the same once you try flying on it yourself. Want to have a go? Sirius couldn't resist. Harry watched as his godfather took off, whooping and laughing like a schoolboy as he put the firebolt through its paces. After Sirius touched down, he said, breathless with exhilaration, "This broom is spectacular. I'm very tempted to get one myself." Harry chuckled. Go ahead. I think the firebolt is going to stay relevant for years to come. The tech in this can't be easily beaten. And it's not like we lack the funds, do we, Padfoot? Sirius grinned. Let me discuss it with Amelia. His expression suddenly turned serious. Well, with all this fun, I completely forgot why I came here. Harry, I have some bad news for you and other Hogwarts students. It looks like the Minister has become paranoid and is stationing Dementors at Hogwarts to protect Charles from the Azkaban escapees. Harry's good mood evaporated even though he knew this was going to happen. Where is that man getting his ideas from? Dementors will serve no purpose other than making the school gloomy and giving every student inside nightmares. They'll provide no help in guarding against the Death Eaters. Sirius sighed. Many agree with you, but there's no convincing the Minister. He's adamant. Even Dumbledore tried to change his mind and failed. I just came to warn you so you could prepare for spending your school days with Dementors around. Harry's eyes hardened with determination. I have no worries about Dementors. They should fear me. With that, Harry drew his wand and cast, Expecto Patronum. To Sirius's astonishment, a brilliant silver light erupted from Harry's wand, coalescing into the form of a majestic thunderbird. Harry himself was surprised. The last time he had cast the spell, his patroness had taken the form of a lion. It seemed the animagus ritual had altered his patroness as well, a development that delighted him. The silvery thunderbird soared around the grounds as Harry and Sirius watched in awe. After a few moments, Harry ended the spell, feeling he had made his point. Sirius whistled, impressed. A corporeal patroness, and of a magical creature like a thunderbird, no less. You continue to surprise me, pup. It looks like the Dementors really will have to fear you. Curious, Sirius asked Harry about his method for learning the patroness charm. Though he knew how to cast one, his own wasn't perfect. After receiving some tips from Harry about visualizing happy thoughts, Sirius also perfected the spell, conjuring a silvery dog that bounded around the castle grounds. As Sirius prepared to leave, the demands of his job calling him back, he bid farewell to Arcturus and Harry. The Auror department was working overtime in their search for the escaped convicts, leaving little time for leisure. For the remaining days of summer, Harry spent every free moment on his firebolt, honing his flying skills and reveling in the sheer joy of it. With the pressure of immediate threats temporarily lifted, he allowed himself this simple pleasure. As he carefully packed the firebolt in his trunk for Hogwarts, Harry reflected on the coming year. Owls and the looming threat of escaped Death Eaters awaited him at school, but Harry was ready for anything.
Thanks for listening.